Sean.
Get your head in the game!
Wake up, everybody. Today is whatever, and this is a special episode of Never Free to Play. It's a Spoilercast. It's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Sean and I have finally finished the game. Sean finished it a little bit ago. When did you finish it, Sean?
I finished it back in March, April timeframe.
Sounds about right. And then I recently finished it, I don't know, like a week and a half ago, my second playthrough. And then I also played the DLC. I had been waiting for the Intergrade upgrade for my PS5. And I wanted to be fresh for this because I played it back last year when it came out, and I didn't want to be hazy. So here we are, ready to talk about a really good game overall, I think I'd say. So starting now, going forward, all bets are off for anything Final Fantasy VII related, and that includes the original game, any game that came out since, Advent Children, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then finally, of course, the DLC that released starring Yuffie, Intermission it was referred to. So you have, this is your ample warning, stay if you want, leave if you want, but we're going to talk about spoilers.
I'm going to spoil Crisis Core so hard.
Zack dies! The main character.
Yeah, that's a Final Fantasy VII spoiler.
Well, that's
but not a Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler.
No, it's not. All right. So you wanted to talk about the demo up front real quick. Did you play the demo?
I didn't, and I really wanted to, and I had like just gotten a PS4 when the demo came out, and I just didn't get around to it. I was still in Alaska at the time, but I just wanted, because you played the demo, and I know you played the demo. How did you feel coming out of the demo? Like, I think that's where I want to start, is how did that demo leave you feeling about this game?
Well, I'm going to do this from memory because it's been a while. That demo came out very early 2020 or like late 2019. And it was early 2020 because I remember Jason and I both played it and we had our impressions. And so for all I know, this could be completely untrue of how I actually felt at the time. You'd have to go back and watch that episode. But I remember being real high on it. I thought that it was... I didn't know what to expect. I had seen the E3 presentation, which was the demo. The demo that we ended up playing was exactly what they had shown to the at the E3 prior to this, because 2020 didn't have an E3. So 2019, all the influencers, all the press, media, etc., they got to go play this game, and everybody just spoke so highly of it. So I guess I did have that impression going into it, thinking, okay, it's going to be really good. But man, I just didn't know how good. It was the first section. There was, I believe if you had access to the original Final Fantasy VII demo, it's the same portion essentially, where you go into Shinra, you fight a couple like random encounters, you go through the reactor, and then you fight the Scorpion robot boss.
Yep.
And it was just
I don't know if that's the original
amazing.
demo. That's too far ago, but
right.
That is the remake demo.
Exactly. So, and it was, in retrospect, everything I wanted it to be, I guess, at least as far as an opening is concerned. Like, they showed you real quick, this is how combat goes, this is how materia works, and here's a nice little showcase of some characters and some iconic moments, because man, this franchise is full of iconic moments, and some of them, of the most iconic ones, are in those first like 45 minutes, jumping off the train, fighting that boss, escaping the reactor explosion. It was really, really good.
Now, did you feel coming out of that game that you were just going to get a straight Final Fantasy VII remake, or did you come out of that demo thinking we were going to get ultimately what we got?
Oh, for sure, a straight remake. Like, we knew it ended at Midgar. That I think, assuming anyway, at some point we would find that out if we hadn't. But at some point we learn before the game comes out that the game only goes up through Midgar. So that portion was a little like, that was the only part where I wasn't sure what I was getting. Because I was like, how do you drag that out? Why do you drag that out?
Yeah, because that's the thing is as I just finished learning, Midgar is only like 5 hours. And that demo, because I must have watched... Did you guys put out a video of one of you beating the demo?
No.
Or I must have watched somebody beat it because I've watched someone beat the demo before it came out.
Yeah, it wasn't
And like that demo lengthwise is almost 1-for-1 how long it takes you in the original.
yeah, it's about 45 minutes,
Yeah.
30 if you're going real fast in either of them. But yeah, it is minute to, like you said, minute to minute, pound for pound, shot for shot, aside from a couple embellishments here and there and a couple extra scenes that they can throw in because they can't in the old one. It's the same exact thing. There's no extra stuff except you like Jesse way more than you did before, and you're like, oh hey, Wedge is that guy from Breaking Bad, and Barrett has a little bit more characterization than being just a hothead.
Yeah.
I mean that's mostly still what he is, but oh man, Barrett's so cool. He's so cool. But we'll
He
get
is
into
so
that
cool.
in a bit.
He's also
But
such
yeah,
a good dad.
I thought that this was going to be a straight up remake, like everybody did, until I guess there were some spoilery trailers right before, like TV spots that I just was able to dodge. But it wouldn't be until people played the game that they realized that this was something a little bit different.
Yeah.
So let's get into some general impressions. Then we'll talk about the combat in detail, what we thought about it, what we liked, what we didn't like about it. And then we'll kind of do as high level of a plot analysis as we can, and mostly just our feelings, especially on stuff that changed. Because again, you should really play, in my opinion. It's okay. Here's another question before we get into general impressions. I absolutely 100% think that you should play the original Final Fantasy VII before you play this game. Not that you have to, but I think it is a lesser experience because of it.
I would agree with that. So I think I commented when I beat Final Fantasy VII on a previous podcast that Katie was able to keep pace with the storyline, but it resonates better if you've played the game previously and you kind of know what's going to play out, especially because it does have the deltas between the two, and
Right.
and those deltas carry some additional weight when you realize kind of what they're implying for the grander story.
Yeah, and in any game, any remake or anything like this, a new adaptation, etc., you can't appreciate, or hate for that matter, but for the most part in this game, appreciate a difference or an enhancement if you don't know what they did. If you don't know what you're coming from, how can you enjoy this as much as humanly possible? Again, like you said, of course I can keep pace, and until the very end, the story is almost 1-for-1 throughout the whole game anyway. Just elongated because it is about a 30-hour game. I did this one in... Still took a long time. I thought skipping a lot of scenes and skipping all of the side quests that I'd be like, I'll get this down in 15 hours. Nope. Because I still watched a lot of the scenes.
Yeah. Well, those side quests, you figure there's only, the 3 sections where you could spend them doing side quests, and none of those take more than a handful of hours.
Yeah, I guess that's true. The Sector 7 ones. I did Sector 7 and Sector 6 on my first playthrough, and then I barely did anything after that because I was starting to get, and we'll talk about this in a bit, fatigued with the pacing of the game. But general impressions, how did you feel about Final Fantasy VII Remake?
I think it has to be said that this is probably the best remake of a game. And this is, most remakes are remasters, right? Yeah, they are a facelift for the game. They maybe give you some quality of life improvements. Kind of similar to what we saw with Mass Effect Legendary Edition. With the exception of some improvements to the gameplay of the first game, that entire Legendary Edition is just a facelift for the game. This is a total overhaul of the game, which really, when you think about it, was the only way you were going to bring this, remaster this. There wasn't a way to make this game pretty, but keep it Final Fantasy VII, because you were gonna have to put in so much effort to make this game look like a modern game. You might as well have gone all the way and did what they did. And it's impressive. It's kind of crazy, what they've done. It probably speaks to where Final Fantasy VII sits within the annals of gaming history. I mean, this is a seminal turn point game within within video games. That said, and you and I have talked about before, not without its flaws. Pacing being the primary one of them at times, but from obviously it's a gorgeous game. It was an even more gorgeous game for the 10 minutes I spent playing at your house on the PS5. That was
that's right.
It's amazing what some quality lighting and I guess ray tracing can do for a game. But it's a game that is also most of the time, and we'll get to it more when we get into combat, but most of the time to me was a joy to play. It's one of the few games where even by the end I was still excited about going into fights. Especially because I had learned some lessons from some earlier fights that because I wasn't properly set up for them made them a slog.
Well put. Yeah, I pretty much echo all of that. This game has some 10 out of 10 highs. You know, it has the makings of a perfect game in the patented Karch game ratings ranking system, but it falls short. I would say it's definitely a great game, though, for sure, but because the things that drag it down in both story and gameplay. It's funny that both of them have this problem. At least I feel like they have the same problem manifested differently, obviously, because story and gameplay aren't the same kind of thing, but basically it's just pacing. This isn't... I feel stalled for some reason. Why am I stalled in a game like this in the main story? Like, you want to have side quests, you want to have end game content and chapter select and secret bosses, whatever. But don't, like, you should never make the mistake of, like, padding the main game.
Your main story should flow.
And while I think overall it was clever of them to end it where they did, and I don't think, knowing what they're doing now with it, they could have ended it any other place. Maybe, depending on how quickly they'd gotten through Midgar, maybe somewhere else as well. But at the same time, you could just feel like we can't put out a 10-hour, 15-hour game. People will hate it, even if the extra content boosted it up to 2025. Because with the extra content, like if you're going for like that quote-unquote platinum or 100% or whatever, you're probably looking at about 40 hours, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, they just probably weren't willing to, for their big debut, as good as it was. People would have knocked it for. I wouldn't have, but other people would have knocked it for being so short. That said, this was a brave, bold entry. This is a huge, huge leap of faith. They clearly believed in this, but I gotta imagine that they were probably thinking, "Ooh, I hope people like this," and I think that people clearly did. I can't wait for more. Every drop I loved. Intermission was really, really, really good. Makes me love Yuffie. I'll talk about that later. I don't know where I'm going to squeeze that in. I'll do my impressions on Intermission, and that was only about like maybe 3.5 hours tops.
Oh,
and
wow.
there's more, and I could have done even, I could have stretched it out to about 6, 7, like other people have said on podcasts and online and whatnot. But yeah, Intermission was great. And just the perfect slice. I wish we were getting one more before the next part comes out. I know we're not going. At least they said we're not going to. But I wish we were getting one more, just one little more. But it was a fantastic way to fold in Yuffie in a way that makes sense for what they're doing with this remake. It was just more clever. Like, if this game is anything, it's clever. This is a very clever remake. And like I said, I can't wait for more. I hope it's no later than 2023. That would be. They've started working on it. They said that it's coming along nicely. That could just be PR speak, because leading up to this release, originally it was CyberConnect. They were going to farm out the remake of one of their most beloved Final Fantasy VII is a franchise unto itself. They were going to farm out one of their most beloved IP games, etc., to a third party, and apparently that it wasn't going well, and so they pulled it in. They must have been able to use a lot of it though, because then they turned it around in like 2 years. From the moment they said, "Hey, yeah, we're taking over," the game came out like 2 years later, so it couldn't have been that bad.
Hopefully it's because they had the graphical engine built.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, because a graphical engine, especially these days, takes so much time. So now, I mean, the thing's going to be is, they've got the base engine, but they're going to have to create all new assets for not Midgar, which is going to be in addition to the story.
They made it in Unreal Engine 4, so.
Did they really? Huh.
Yeah. That probably helped, though. Anyway.
Probably.
So, yeah, we both liked it. We both had a couple problems. So, you spend a lot of this game in cutscenes and story, but you spend even more of it in combat. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about combat. Did you like it?
I did, probably about 90% of the time. What it boils down to is I found the combat to be fast paced and kind of kinetic. Is there a kind of frantic combat, especially if you're using Cloud, and to a lesser extent Tifa. But there's a definite aspect here that the expectation by Square Enix is that you're going to be controlling Cloud as your main character. because he's got the Punisher and the Operative stances. The Operative being kind of his base, where he can block and he's quicker, and his Punisher just being his like all out, just tearing apart people, and he's got the parry ability, and that's so much more interesting than the ability that any of the rest of them have. But also like So and on top of that, his special attacks, the things were braver and what they want that aren't quite limit breaks, but they're not material. His special attacks were so much better than any other character's special attacks.
For sure. They had the most applicable uses, I think.
They did. And like Aerith's, with the exception of the one where she puts the ward down that allows her to double cast spells, because you kind of then got to control where she's standing. Aerith and Barrett's abilities were definite. Like they were clearly built to, hey, use these, but like, the ability, tell them to go use these abilities and then go back to using Cloud. They definitely feel the way, because like Barrett has one where he just empties his entire meter, and as long as he's doing it, he's not doing anything. So it was great to target people, but you might as well move to someone else, and go back. Tifa was the next closest I felt to somebody that you could actually use, and she was fun to use because punching the crap out of things is always enjoyable. Her specials were weird though, because they felt like, I don't know, I felt like her specials, they were going for something like strategic, but her abilities never quite landed for me. Like I eventually hit where I was like, I might as well choose the one that charges up her little her triangle attack, because everything else was kind of
chakra, her chi or ki, I think is what they refer to it as. I played a lot of Tifa this time around because I felt I just connected with her moveset the most, and she dishes it out, I think, just a little bit better than Cloud if you're getting because there is like a combo system almost. There's a fighting game-esqueness to it, which is something I really loved about the game in general. One of the, combat in general. A positive point I had is everybody had a role, but not so like rigid as like when you play an MMO and you got your tank and your healer and your attacker, like, and that's something great about Final Fantasy VII going back to the original is like, everybody could be a little bit of everything. You might have devoted someone to being just your caster or just your melee attacker, but like it was hard for people to not be good at just even to an extent something, except for Aerith in physical attacks. Her natural attack was just so low, but they fixed that in this. Yeah. They fixed that in this by not only making it decent, it doesn't hit as fast, but it also counts as magic damage, which is super important in certain fights. So like I just love the variety, but also the simplicity of sliding. Like it's something that homogenization in mechanics is very difficult to then separate from the theming. And games try to do this sometimes and they fail miserably. This game did not. Like square to attack, okay, cool, but it feels so different to attack with different people. Like one button smashing for Cloud feels so different from Barrett, which feels so different from Tifa.
Yeah. But I think that's where it plays into that, like Barrett. Yeah, let's face it. Your square attack, wasn't really, for most characters, wasn't really doing a ton. Now, Tifa could, Cloud if he's in Punisher mode, it could, but like Barrett was like, all right, I'm gonna sit here and hold square, which kind of goes back to why I didn't spend, unless a couple of times where I screwed up and Barrett was the only person left standing in my party, or I was fighting things that were airborne. I didn't focus on using Barrett. Probably the next biggest problem that I had with this, that I had with combat, was there were definitely a couple fights where it was like, hey, if you're not spec'd just right with the right material on your character, this is going to be a pain in the butt. And Hell House is the upfront example. There's a couple other smaller ones that just made it a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I agree.
And you talk about padding and like breaking your pacing. Hell House was like, I must have spent at least 10, 15 minutes just fighting Hell House, because I didn't go in that fight with all the different types of materia equipped.
Felt like twice
elemental
as long.
materia. Ugh.
Yeah, I hated that fight originally, which is such a shame because it is such an amazing spectacle and surprise. So you fight Hell House in during the wall market segment. There's this weird arena that's underneath the ground that doesn't exist in the original game, and it's part of the story this time. And you're fighting mooks and nobodies, like it's like whatever. And then the final bout, it's like, and you're fighting Hell House, and it's everything you remember, but now translated. And it's like, wow, what a great boss, what a great character, or what a great enemy to like upgrade to boss status. but it sucked. That fight,
Yeah,
just
it did. It was just an
sucked.
awful fight.
And so did the one with the same thing. They had that like death on a chariot. I don't remember what the original monster's name was. But it was
yeah,
just
the one that you fight in the train station.
yeah, like at the very end.
The very end of the
Like,
of the
you
of the
leave
ghost train station segment.
Yeah, and so
You got to
it's
go
right
back as
before you get to
Aerith
the
gets
fight.
like kidnapped by it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And it's just it's so cool. It's another it's another enemy up jump to boss status, but then the fight is so not like anything you've done yet, and nothing, not really like anything you'll do later. And
Yeah.
and like you said, like there's just a handful of those fights, and they all suck because of it, and it's really lame. And it's part of, and it's a piece of what I have a problem with the most, and that is this game tries to do a lot, and it succeeds at most of it combat wise, but it does not nail any one thing well. Like, it's turn based, but not really, because it's definitely action based. But the action based part is like kind of irrelevant. Like, placing matters, but not always. In fact, not most of the time. And blocking felt like I just don't get the combat in this game. I am not good at it. I've played through it twice, and I still feel like I'm stumbling through it. Did you eventually feel, aside from weird things like Hell House, did you eventually feel like you understood how to play this game?
So I think the biggest thing that I eventually figured out was you want Cloud in Punisher mode all the time. If Cloud ain't in Punisher mode, you're wasting your time, because he does so much more damage and builds his ATP meter so much faster in Punisher mode than he does in Operative. And I basically got there with the Reno fight, because the Reno fight, if you don't remember that
melee,
Cloud has that auto parry,
yeah,
he tears apart. And that's where I was like, look, I got to go Operator, get Cloud close, go Punisher, and then just let him tear into people. And that for pretty much that carried me through most scrub fights.
Okay, so I mean, for the Reno fight, and any fight where it was pretty obvious that it was going to be melee only, I'll agree with you 100%. I went into Punisher mode, and you just wreck them.
Yeah.
And I would have been okay if they'd kind of leaned into that. I know some people out there would be like, "Whoa, you just go and press triangle to win, or whatever, or hold block to win." But like, the reason I wasn't in Punisher mode most of the game is because there's a lot, like any fight with more than 3 enemies, especially if they hit you with a ranged attack, I don't know how you're supposed to walk out of that with not taking almost all your health and damage. Or damage and whatever. Like, like the Shinra soldier, I'm just gonna open fire on you. I'm like, I can't dodge it. Like, there's a dodge roll, but it's kind of useless.
The dodge roll is kind of useless.
Like, I don't know why it's in there. And then blocking felt really necessary, but also just not that helpful. Like especially
I can't say
mode.
outside of in Punisher mode where I was using the blocking for the parrying that I ever blocked.
Okay, so maybe there's another thing that I was doing wrong. Maybe I was trying to like kind of mix it up, and I should have just gone like, because whenever I played Tifa, there was no blocking. It was just mash.
Just take the hits and close as fast as you can. And like I said, with Cloud, that's close an Operator, smack them real good when you get there, and then swap over the Punisher and tear them apart. That was probably where Triple Strike?
Triple slash
Triple slash is awesome. It's what the second or third ability you get with Cloud. I mean, it's by far his best ability, and you get it early on, but also it was great for closing with enemies.
It was really
but
good.
no, you're right. There's like, it's a game whose combat has a lot of these little things on it, but they seem unnecessary. Like another thing, and kind of sad, summons. Summons just seemed.
Yeah.
I mean, I did them because they were essentially like a guy showing up and doing free damage.
True.
When you just summoned them, but they weren't like they just didn't seem ever like they were really contributing to a fight that much for me.
Yeah, I again, everything, I like everything. I do like everything, but make it better in the future. Like in the sequel, like really refine this. Don't make aerial combat such a chore, especially when I don't have a ranged fighter. Don't give me aerial combat if I don't have a ranged fighter.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, jumping over to intermission real quick, Yuffie is a ranged fighter and a melee fighter, and it works flawlessly. And the way that they fixed it. It is fixed there. So as long as they continue to do that in the sequel, that's great. Like, she closes the distance when you try to do melee much easier. She has like ninjutsu that lets you do essentially free magic. And that was amazing. That was such a cool feature. Like you have to use an ATB to change the element, but you don't need to like have the material equipped. And now it doesn't matter what they're weak to. You're gonna have it on hand because you only
she
control
basically had
her.
like a built-in elemental material
It starts
attached
out
to.
yeah, exactly. It starts out non-elemental. It's basically the ranged version of her attack. You you throw out your shuriken, and it just kind of floats out there for a certain amount of time, and then you spam the attack button, and then she casts a spell or the ninjutsu in that case instead of doing like a melee attack or whatever. And it starts out non-elemental, and then you can use an ATB gauge to change it to fire, lightning, wind, or ice. And so you're covered on that front, which was
That's
really
pretty cool.
awesome because they throw out. There's like a big robot boss and he spawns little drone ads. And in the original version of this game, that would have been a nightmare because you would have had to switch to Barrett and slowly whittled those down. But she's just like pop, 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 pop. And then that added to the stagger of the boss. And it was just a really good, well-designed fight because of it.
Nice.
So I am hopeful already that the next version will have a lot of these things kind of squared away.
That is encouraging. I'd like to touch on something that this game has got to fix in the next ones is when you got to give me loadouts because late in the game you are it is splitting the party and you are swapping out characters fairly often, and it is infuriating to be like, okay, I got Aerith and Barrett now. Let me pull my materia off of Tifa and Cloud and put on Aerith and Barrett, and then you finish a segment 5 minutes later. And, okay. Let me pull my materia off of Aerith and Barrett and put it on Tifa, and then 5 minutes later, it's like eventually in the game, I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna split thing. Some of you guys are gonna get like the version of the cure and the fire material that I haven't leveled up, just so you have it. And I'm not doing this because it's eating up too much time, and it was driving me nuts.
Yeah, and there's in pivotal cutscenes that head straight into boss fights, they do give you an option to like access the menu, but like, man, if you're not looking, you won't notice that little that square button.
Whereas the original game is like brings up a menu, it's like, hey, do this, and then press this button to say you're ready. It's like it's a square button in the bottom of a cutscene, and you're like, oh, I should probably hit that. They don't want to break
immersion, and I understand that, but like, come on, guy, like to a point, I get that, but it's a video game.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that that's what it is, and it's an RPG of all things, so it's gonna have menus and whatnot. But what did you think of? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say I do feel like by the end, I did feel like I felt powerful. By the end of the game, I felt like you talk about like a thing that's often frustrating for me is games where their difficulty curve or their power curve is like you never feel like you're actually gaining power because the enemies keep getting stronger too. This like whether it may have been more just the strength of my party, although I think there is some aspect of I did get better at the game. I did feel powerful by the end. I didn't feel over powerful, but I did feel like I was certainly I was dominant at the game.
Did you like the stagger mechanic?
Yes, but like it also like for what seemed like such a core mechanic, it didn't seem like it was always like a pivotal thing. Like at times, like in some fights, it was like if you don't get the stagger, you're screwed.
Right.
But most of the fights, it was like I'm gonna kill these guys well before I ever get the stagger, so it felt kind of pointless. So it just again, its implementation kind of seemed inconsistent.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was just saying. It's like, okay, cool, but you messed it up a bit. Like you said, like especially, well, really everything. Like, what's the point of having stagger mechanics on, like, the random rat if I'm just going to kill it in 2 hits? I'm never going to stagger that rat. And some of the slightly tougher, quote-unquote, random encounters, I'm going to waste my time trying to stagger this, especially if it's not even, like, okay, it's got a weakness to like fire, but that's not what staggers it. You have to do some random condition. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's kind of dumb. I'm just not going to do that. And then bosses, like, it would reset after those cool cuts. It just took too much effort a lot of the time. And then it was over so quick. And it's like, no, it's like, this was my time to go ham. And I can't think that fast.
Yeah.
So
yeah, again, it was there were some boss fights where it was implemented well, and you're like, the stagger is key here, and there's a fairly straightforward, and a sensical way that I was able to build stagger, and then it added to the fight. But the rest of the time, like I'd be like, oh, I staggered that guy. Oh, cool. I guess I'll just wail on him for a little bit. But there were only a few fights, especially like in the later half of the game, where I remember seeing like enemy staggers go up, and I was like, oh, I can can easily get a stagger here. That's what I should be doing. Most of the time, it's like Cloud, just keep hitting him until I can string together a bunch of triple slashes, and we'll call this a day.
Yeah, I think the biggest flaw with that is, especially in bosses, a lot of the time they'll be like, okay, hit this other part of it. I'm like, I can't reach that, and I can't target spells constantly, and so I'm never going to blow that arm off or break that horn except by accident. And then it's never going to get pressured, and then I can never increase that gauge reliably anyway.
Yeah, there was a couple fights that were definitely like, well, if this was still turn-based and I could target the arm, that would be one thing. But it's like trying to get me over there to hit just the arm with my regular attacks was like, this isn't going to work. And it's like, yeah, I can target them with Braver or the other abilities, but there's also aspect there too of like, which always struck me as weird is like my ATB attacks could miss, and that was like kind of annoying to me. It was like, let me like to sit there and like I'm up against him. I'm now hitting here to hit him because it's a good time. But then I got unlikely because the creature decided to do like a side jump to the side, and Cloud doesn't retarget, and he just swings at the air. And I was like, all right, that's a little frustrating. Which is probably one reason why another reason I defaulted to triple slash, because
triple slash don't miss.
Triple slash don't miss. Triple slash hit.
Yeah, and so the final bad thing I'll say, because again, this sounds like we're just ragging on it, but I still had a good time. And you had, like you said, you had fun with it 90%. And this would be like the definition of death by 1,000 cuts, but not even death, just minor irritation. it's rug burns and paper cuts. Too many things require an ATB gauge, and I guess that's part of the difficulty. But it just didn't feel super balanced. And here's another thing: the intermission. I had already talked about it. Really is. It doesn't cost me anything to use that ninjutsu. I just have to throw my shuriken out and smash the square button. And if I've already used an ATB to get the element, then I'm good to go. That's the part that costs something. And she had abilities that cost, you couldn't steal, you couldn't assess, all that classic stuff. Materia always needed an ATB. But it was just too... I feel like the main game, and then the other character in Integrate or Intermission his name is Sonon, and you never control him directly. Like you can't switch to him and do like melee attacks. You can tell him like abilities to use, but he is otherwise automated.
Okay.
And so I felt the pain significantly there because I couldn't switch to him and take control and charge that ATB to use one of his abilities that I needed. And that's not to say I wanted to take control of him. It's just to say like, fix ATB, especially for characters I'm not controlling, and I know they wanted you to swap around, but that just like, okay, cool, but just it didn't quite work. Like I'm like literally just gonna be like pausing constantly or pressing the button to switch, and it just feels so like jolty. Like I'm over here, I'm over here. I'm using this ability, and like I'm never actually experiencing the fight then. It's almost worse than the classic menus of a turn-based JRPG at that point. Ironically, considering that's what they're trying to like merge
emulate.
And yeah, exactly.
In some ways, in a weird, a not do it way.
Materia is cool. It looks awesome in the weapons. It looks cool in the way it's modeled, and the combinations are really great. I loved Materia in this game. I can't believe they were able to just kind of seamlessly bring it over that way.
Yeah.
How did you like it?
I liked it. I am a little worried because, obviously, I just got out of Midgar in Final Fantasy VII, the original. None of my materia are leveled up.
No, not even the second one.
And we got to this game, and all my materia, at least one version of every materia, was maxed out. When it came to like the spells, obviously like the HP up and all that, maybe not, but like there's same way with the weapons. While it was cool to see a lot more of the weapons, because as I've learned in Final Fantasy VII, with the exception of using steel, you're stuck with a Buster Sword with Cloud for all of Midgar. Like we've gone through all of Cloud's like iconic weapons, and pretty much most of their pretty much
half
of those four characters. Yeah, we've seen like half of their iconic weapons, and it's like I've got a lot of game left. So I can't help but feel that we're going to get a Metroid-esque power reset here for every part of this game. which is a little frustrating.
It's interesting. Well, it very much just depends on where we're going with this, and we'll get into theories on the sequel later, based on a couple extra things that we've seen from the intermission ending. But it's either I don't mind power resets. It is like you said, you bring it up Metroid, it's the joke. But like, well, I mean, that's the game though. The game is powering up. I don't lose immersion as easy. Like I can recognize
and Metroid doing that doesn't bother me. Where this will strike weird and it is totally kind of asinine, but it's because I've played Final Fantasy VII and I'm used to carrying my RPG character throughout the entire game, and now it's like, wait, am I going to reset every game? It's going to be a little weird because it's supposed to be one continuous story, whereas Metroid games are each kind of their own tale.
Yeah. It's a good question, and I have yet to see anyone come up with a good answer for it that sounds reasonable, like it could happen.
Yeah, I will say I think I was frustrated more by materia than most other aspects of combat in this game, with the exception of those fights we talked about. Like, it annoyed me that again, like materia can miss. Like if the monster, so what I found, so you got Fire, Fyra, and Firaga, right? Well, Firaga had a longer like wind up time, and if the monster moved away, you would just totally whiff with the spell. Like they targeted where the monster was when you cast the spell, and that was that frustrated me a lot because it was like, well, like I've built up these powerful spells. And now it's like I might as well not use them, I guess, because
like sometimes you think like they thought they were designing like a Dark Souls boss almost, like oh, watch out for its attacks. I'm like, this thing is not moving with any kind of like trackable like I can't memorize its things. I can be on the lookout for the little like hazard sign that says here comes the big move, get behind the pillar or whatever. But aside from that, there was no rhyme or reason to anything. And so you couldn't know, oh, don't cast your magic now because there's no tells. It's not happening. Who knows what it's about to do?
Yeah. And it always made it work because, like, you're right. If you don't bear it, your best option against aerial enemies was spells. But then they would, like, swoop and attack, and you're like, all right, well, that's even if I casted fire on them, that attack missed. And it was like, okay, I'm out of materia now, or I'm out of MP, and now it's like I gotta slowly build up because they're aerial units, so it takes me forever to fill my ATB, so I can use an ether, so I can cast more spells.
Yeah, it was weird that magic cost MP and ATB. Again, going back to like, could you?
Yeah, I didn't like that.
The ATB economy is just a little unbalanced. And MP was always so like, unless you like loaded Aerith specifically up with MP up. Everybody was sitting in the 50s. Yeah. By the end, and they started in the 20s. I'm like, that's a really small increment.
Well, and especially when and then Ether only gave you like 20 back. So, and then you cast like 2 Fyras or 3 Fyras, and you've used up 21. It's like,
there it goes. Now you did get it back in combat real slowly. It would tick up as you like attacked and stuff, but never fast enough to really make a difference.
And admittedly, they were pretty generous with the spacing of the benches.
Oh, for sure.
Obviously, benches restored everything. So,
the benches with a little save symbol on them. I love it because that's where
and Cloud taking forever to sit down.
Oh, don't even get me started. That's not combat related, but let's just talk about that a little bit. Hallways, animations, goodness gracious, load times in the original because I played the PS on a base PS4.
The load times were quite long, I will say.
Boy, they were so bad.
It was a good thing I beat this before my S arrived.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think I did. I think there was a little bit of overlap time between the two, and I remember going, "Oh man, this is." I think because I've been playing Monster Hunter on the S, and I was like, "No, that's like load times was 5 seconds," and now it's like, "All right, let me just sit here and read the tips that they have for the next minute."
Unfortunately, I mean, it's great that they were faster, but unfortunately, it doesn't cure the problem with really so many portions where I'm forced to walk, so many portions where I'm forced to crawl through a crevice, so many portions where you just the game comes to a grinding halt.
Well, the because it's the same way how I assumed at least it was the same way how playing Metroid Prime, you would shoot a door to open and it would take it a few seconds to open. It was how they disguised them loading the next area.
Yeah, for sure, but I don't know. Part of me like has to wonder, is like, is this really what it took? All of these? Is this how like ambitious this game is? That it's because God of War had its share of those,
Mm-hmm.
but not nearly as many. And I would say it's
True.
a comparable looking game, maybe
Yeah.
just a little worse, like fidelity wise.
Close though,
but
certainly very close.
Oh yeah, I bet exactly, very close. And you would only get them in like really big, major open areas, like a giant cavern underground, and then that would be it. Now you could explore the entire cavern versus just going down a corridor and then up a ladder into another like really slow paced thing. So here's hoping whatever they do with the second one, that the next gen stuff is going to be equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to say about combat specifically before we move on to the next topic?
No. I mean, it definitely sounds like we're harping on it, but
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. Like I said, I did enjoy going into combat in that game, but I probably learned how to operate around its flaws by the end of the game, and then once I hit that point, I was like, okay, like I now know how to do combat in a way that keeps it enjoyable for me, vice it being maybe innately enjoyable.
Yeah. And sometimes when all I wanted to do was get to the next story beat, it did just feel like it was getting in my way. And then sometimes the stories got in the way that like I just want to go fight. So like they would trade places sometimes depending on what I was in the mood for. And I wonder if I just did some of the end game content or went back and did the side missions I've never done, like would this feel better knowing that I'm just sitting down to do combat, or would it still feel like kind of sloggy because I just that's how I think it feels. Hard to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, combat was a significant change, and so we talked about it at significant length. But there were a lot of changes in this game. There are some really big story changes that happen, especially at the end, but throughout. But I think, just there were always going to be creative liberties that were taken. And that's not quite the way to put it, because almost everybody that was involved in the original that matters, like the significant creative forces behind the original were the significant creative forces on this game. And that's probably why it's so good. I think the only person that wasn't there would be Sakaguchi, and I don't know how much of a role he had outside of just being like the head honcho of the Final Fantasy series,
Sure.
Producing and or executive producing even at that point. But you got Nomura, you've got Kitase, you've got the guy whose name I just heard the other day who did the original like story scenario writing and then was back to do the story scenario writing for this as well. But yeah, you got those three people at the head, and then of course Nobuo Uematsu. Ooh, the music. Let's talk about the music real quick because I didn't put a bullet point for that. But oh my gosh, one of the best Final Fantasy soundtracks
Yes.
ever. Just like I've played a lot of Final Fantasy, I'm playing a lot of Final Fantasy right now, and I know the music well. And 9 and 8 and 10 are all really, really good. 6 is amazing. 5 is great, and I think anything before 5, it starts to get a little like it's fine, but it's not. Aside from a couple tunes, like the opening, do 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 do, like those things which are classic. There's not a lot I would point to and be like, yeah, that theme's amazing. But once you get later in, they're great. But 7, and this game with its rearrangement, so many amazing classics, and then so many new-ish things. I don't know how many brand new songs there were, but there were a lot of when I went to Walmart the first time I played, I was like, why is the song so different? And then I realized that the original Walmart tune is actually like earlier when you're under the tunnels heading towards Sector 7 with Aerith, but it's remixed. I'm like, oh, that's where it was. And it's so cool to hear that in that. And then I like the new one too. So I just love the music. It's so good.
That is, I have nothing bad to say about the music in this game, and I always enjoyed, there was a little bit there of trying to find like the music disc, which was a nice little distraction at times, and because it was just kind of fun to sit back and listen to this game. I did enjoy that the classic boss fight music showed up in kind of a pure, only just modernized form, but I also like kind of the remixes they did of it for a couple fights too were a lot of fun.
Yeah, they knew when to stay true, and they knew when to experiment.
Yeah.
And like One Winged Angel, Sephiroth's classic boss fight, has been redone and remixed for so many games and media. Advent Children has its own version, very heavy metal version. The Kingdom Hearts games have their own version, which is very good too. And then this one was just as good in its own way, and it fits so well with the crazy bonkers, time dilation thing that was going on then. But yeah, the music's great, and it's going to continue to be great because there's a lot of themes we didn't hear. That we get to hear when we get to those places.
Can't wait to hear Sid's theme.
Sid's is going to be great. We got to hear a little of the Gold Saucer, which I thought was interesting. Which means
because
we
found the music disc.
What'd you say?
Because it was one of the music discs.
It was, but if you there was like in Sector 5 or wherever when you're hanging out with Aerith, there's that little kid hideaway, and when you go there and hang out with the kids, it's always playing. Unless that's what you mean.
Yeah, well, that's where you bought the disc, and yeah.
And so it's always playing in that background too, unless you change it on the jukebox, which is another fun thing. Like you get all these discs, and then you can actually use them on the various jukeboxes throughout the game. Not that it really matters because you're just moving on from one place to the next, but music is so important. Even if you don't realize it, even if you don't think you like music, it's so important. Sound design is so important, and this game has really good sound design on top of really awesome music. So grade A, perfect 10 out of 10 score for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It did a great job setting some particular scenes too, which was just oof.
Very true. Very true. And so that was a change. Music, there was a lot of changed music. But yeah, let's get into some changes. Let's start with some characters. Who do we want to start with? Who is your favorite? How do I want to put this? Of the main cast, we'll start with the main cast. Who is your favorite upgrade? Because I think everybody got an upgrade except one person. And I'll talk about that in a second.
I think my favorite upgrade was actually Barrett.
Me too! Oh my gosh, he's so good. Some people out there still dissing on him being like one note and kind of boring, but I don't know. What game did they play? No way.
Because he's so great. Especially playing through the 7 original, he is the hothead. And I remember when I did my little casting call and I was looking for kind of key lines, he has a line where he's like, I don't know what's good. Like, I've been here since the beginning and I still don't know what's going on. Like, Barrett never cares about the storyline of that game. He is there to shoot things. And here, like, his little depth of Avalanche and his role, because pretty much in the original, if I recall correctly, you have that, you leave Midgar and he's like, Marlene's with Aerith's mom, stepmom. I can't remember her adoptive mom.
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank.
It'll come to me, and I'll shout it out later.
Elmira.
Elmira, and he's just like, Marlene's with Elmira. I bet you. And Aerith's like, yeah, she'll be okay looking after him. And you're like, okay, that's it, we're done. It's like, all right. Yeah. Whereas this one, like, he is fixated on Marlene and like him doing this for Marlene and wanting back Marlene, but also like. There's cracks in the armor for tough guy Barrett. There's the like
so many.
I got to balance on this thing and I got to jump off this thing, and he does not want to do it, but he knows if he doesn't do it, his like tough guy cred's gonna get called into question, and he does not want that. Like, Barrett was so much fun. To say nothing of him going da 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 da.
So good, so good. Yuffie does that too in her little way. Yeah, it's great. And Rachel was near me when I was playing the other day. She's like, and she's been near me all the time. She's my wife, so of course she's around, but she's been hearing me play Final Fantasy for the last couple of months. Yeah. And of course that music plays at the end of all victories, in battle. And, every now and then she'll hum it herself too. And then she heard Barrett sing it to himself the other day when I finished. She's like, did he just hum the victory music? I'm like, yes, he did. And it was hilarious. But no, Barrett is great. Like, without a doubt, the biggest glow up, I think, visually. I think he looks really good.
He does.
Because
he's still like the size of 2 people, but
yeah, I'm going to tiptoe around this. But he's kind of racist in the original. Racist for the time, casual racism.
Oh yeah.
We said that earlier in a text chat. The phrase "casual racism" came up.
It definitely created some concerns for me on playing the original and doing voices. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah, and it's not that bad. And gigantic.
He's definitely a stereotype in the original.
Yeah, at minimum. Yeah. And so I won't say definitively that it's much better, but I felt better. Like, I didn't feel. He just felt like a human. He felt like a well-rounded character.
Yeah, he felt like a unique character as opposed to just kind of a stereotype thrown into the game and given a gun on his arm.
Right, exactly. And we talked about the demo earlier. Right at the get go, it's like, oh, here's a hard ass, and then like minutes in, he's being kind of silly, goofy with his friends, but he definitely hates Cloud. And then they're in the elevator, and he's like furious and like pacing, and Cloud's calm, and he's like, I gotta chill out too, and like, I love his over-the-top avalanche victory, screw Shinra, I'm gonna kill him and bust some head speeches so much.
But also like
behind
how uncomfortable like Cloud makes him. Because like
Yeah.
he wants to be a leader, but he also is very clearly like he knows he's getting upstaged by Cloud.
Right, like not that his friend, he's not losing the love of his comrades, of his
No.
soldiers, but like, and they still follow him, you know, to the depths and all of that. But they also follow this guy like immediately, and he's capable and he's cool, and yeah. But and as a father, any scene, as a father with a daughter specifically, any scene with Marlene and him, it's like, oh, my heart's melting, and like he's like sobbing when when he reunites with her after the plate falls. He knows she's alive.
Yeah.
At least he hopes she is. You know, that was the idea, is that they were gonna go see her with Elmira. But they didn't know for sure. And then when he gets there and he's crying and his glasses, because at that point, at certain points, he loses his glasses, and they're really important moments, and it's so you can see his eyes, and then he just kind of randomly gets them back. But yeah, I can't wait until you get his backstory scene where you kind of find out what his deal was. And that could be an entire game unto itself.
It really
I really hope we don't spend too much time on it, but
or maybe it'll be its own little version of Intermission. We'll have the little Barrett story.
I strongly think that might be a tactic they use going forward, because of the way that they handled Yuffie, and they basically explained how she's going to bump into the party. They don't show it directly.
Yeah.
And it brings into question if we're ever going to go to Wutai this time. I wonder, because I don't know. It's interesting. We might. I think we still will. And that might be another, like, for all I know,
we'll get that in
intermissions.
theories, because I've got kind of two trains of thought on where the series is going to go, and one is more mundane and one is extreme, and the extreme one deals a lot with Wutai.
Okay, well, we'll save it then. Yeah, I was getting off track. All right, so Barrett, biggest glow up, cool.
Who's
contender?
Who? Ooh, contender.
A contender is clearly Aerith, without a doubt. Not that Aerith was a bad character at all or needed too much, but
wow.
Yeah,
she's so. Oh God, Aerith makes my heart hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And she makes my heart hurt because I know the original and I know what happens to the character, and like she was always like this lovely character, but she like her sense of humor in this one, where she, you know, the way she just like makes Cloud uncomfortable with her, just mostly just by being there and being her, but then kind of takes advantage of it. It's adorable, and she's so great.
She is the best. Best girl. Well, not the best girl, but I like her a lot. I think
best playable girl.
Let's play exactly. So something that happened to Final Fantasy VII's characters over time was they kind of morphed into these caricatures of themselves. And like, I don't have a source, so you don't quote me on this, but over time, certain aspects of the characters were kind of like, you know, put on a pedestal. Cloud was the broody loner, and he is those things, but it's not all he is. And Aerith is so much more than like a genteel, you know, kind of like, you know, otherworldly person. But like, again, these are the things that people latched onto, and I don't know if that's globally or specifically a Japanese thing, but then that created a feedback loop in which the creators started kind of like making those characters that way. And you see that in things they pop up in, like their cameos.
Advent Children is a great example of this, where it's like Cloud
Perfect
is
example.
broody for the entirety of that game.
And he has a good reason, but at the same time, it's like we never.
But it also meant that they wrote a story for us to see him broody.
They did do that. Exactly. That's a very good point. They chose to make a situation where he could lean into that very hard. And Aerith is just kind of like this angelic. I mean, she's dead, so we don't get a lot of Aerith, and you can't get more Aerith. And to be fair, near the end of her life, she is kind of like becoming more withdrawn as she realizes what's going on, who she is, what her role in this life is.
Yep.
Not that she has like
but
foresight
early
in the
on,
original game,
she's very she even in the original, she's very wholesome. Like she enjoys kind of poking a little bit of fun at Cloud, and we got that kind of taken to the next level. And there's even moments in this, because of some of the weird fate stuff and Aerith seemingly seeming to know how the original game plays out, but she maintains a little bit more of like, I guess, her like human side throughout the entirety of this game.
Yeah, she's spunky. Like, so Crisis
Core.
Core.
She is.
Crisis Core is something that came well after the original Final Fantasy VII. She's in that a lot, and she is just kind of this airy. Well, of course, that game has a lot of problems. The only well-acted character in that game is Zack Fair, the main character. He's phenomenal. Sephiroth's okay, and then everyone else is just this like goofy non-human that you can't take seriously. And then Aerith has just been pegged into this, stereotypical, like I said, like put her on a pedestal anime character that you can call your waifu afterwards and draw lots of, questionable pictures of. And it's like that was just a huge disservice to her, especially like why would she fall in love with Zack and vice versa? Like that's not they're very similar. They're both like, like when you see Zack, you get why Aerith, because that she has the relationship with him before you play Crisis Core, and so it makes sense. But then you get this like kind of like
an Aerith that doesn't match up with that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I'm so glad they went back to the roots. They found a really good voice actress. The modeling and the animations are really good. I won't talk about Cloud too much because I think they nailed him.
Yep.
But I don't think he suffered as much as other people have. And I think Cloud's actually, if you do it right, Cloud's not too hard to do. They're doing everything right. He's coming out of his shell a little bit like he always did in the original, and he's got the flashback thing going on, which is like, hey, what's up, crazy boy? He's like, nothing. It's all par for the course.
Yeah, and he's got this combination of like confidence that's almost like been drilled into him by I'm a soldier, but also like he's left that life and it doesn't really know where he is in the world, and so he's got this like uncertainty, and he kind of walks that line really well.
Yeah, and he's young. They're all real young still, except for Barrett. Barrett's like I think 30, 31. Which is younger than us at this point.
That's probably why we relate to Barrett so well now.
Exactly,
he's the closest to us in age.
And then, unfortunately, of the main cast, I have to say, I'm a little disappointed in Tifa. I won't belabor this point because it might just be a me thing, but I hate over-sexualization of female characters in especially Japanese media, but really in any game, if outside of very specific circumstances. And I know that's her original outfit, but there's too much snap bending at the waist and like too many poppy anime motions that just don't fit the kind of like sad introspective Tifa they were giving us. And so there's that.
Yeah.
And then she's too mopey. She's not supposed to be mopey yet. And why did they make her so like, I don't get it. And I'm not feeling it. I don't know. Well, what were your thoughts on Tifa?
Tifa felt all over the place to me was the problem.
Yeah.
So like, and maybe you kind of hit on the head. Like we got all of Tifa that we get throughout all of Final Fantasy VII kind of showed up here. Like to me, at this point in the game, she is like Tifa's like she's strong as heck. Like
yeah.
Tifa can kick all of their butts if she really wanted to. Like that's what Tifa is. And so like, yeah, I mean, she's obviously even the original not as fanatical as like Barrett is. But she's confident, and she has this entire like doubtful, but also like you said, and then like the bubbly, and then but also has her moments of being tough. And it's like she felt inconsistent to me.
Very much so. Yeah, they need to pick a lane, and I wish that lane were don't make her so girly, because she comes off girly, and like not you can't be tough and girly at the same time, and like there's room for that, especially when she's palling around with Aerith. Those are the perfect opportunities to do that. At this, oh my gosh, real quick at the end of intermission, that because you watched the video,
hitchhiking,
right?
Yes,
the hitchhiking. She's teaching Aerith how to, or no, Aerith's teaching. Who's teaching who?
Tifa is teaching Aerith how to hitchhike.
Right. Oh, it's so good. Oh, okay. So back. She should be seedier. Like, if she's going to look like that, and she's going to live in the slums, and she's going to run a bar, and she's going to knock heads, like, make her tougher. You can't be like, oh, Cloud.
Like, the thing is, this is the character that when faced with giant robots, instead of having a huge sword or a gun, it's like, nah, I can punch that to death. And is fully confident in her, like, confident in her ability to do that. Like, Tifa can beat the crap out of anything without assistance. And so,
Somersault,
like
best limit break in the game, in this game.
Yes.
When you use her, it's the coolest one. The whoosh, and then she steps, and then it's so cool, so cool.
But like give her the confidence of someone like that. Like she never comes off outside of combat really as somebody who's like, no, I can totally do this.
Right. They gave it to Aerith. They're letting her be a human who has control and agency of her of her thoughts and feelings. But Tifa does already seemed a little too hitched to Cloud. And again, that does happen to a degree later, and it's super important that it does. But I don't know. Like you said, it's inconsistent. But, I think inconsistent is the best way to put it.
Well, and perhaps one of the things that prevented Tifa from getting that far is as we talk about a female character who is fully confident and kind of has justified moments of doubt, and we got that with Jessie.
It's true.
Like,
Jessie
there's a chance that
I want Tifa to be.
Yeah, like Jessie is probably what we wanted Tifa to be, and maybe that's the problem. Is that if they'd both been that way, we would have had two very similar characters. Because
that's such a good point.
I think you have to agree that Jessie is the best, probably the best character who gets the best improvement of any character in the game.
Yeah, going from just like the difference of being like a nothing side character who dies
which
2 hours in
isn't all that hard to do. But
no, but it is and it isn't. You have to make her from scratch. They made Jessie from scratch. They had a general idea that she has like this armor outfit. She's got a headband and brown hair, and that's literally. And she got a crush on Cloud.
And she made the bombs.
And she made the bombs, and they ran with that crush so hard, and it could have been so irritating, but it made it's so endearing.
It made me so sad because I was watching this crush and I was like, oh, I know what happens.
And she doesn't get let down. Like at no point does he reject her. Nope. Like there's a reality where she lives technically even at the end of this game potentially, and Cloud goes on a date with her instead and says screw you, Tifa. But no, she has a tragic ending that she feels comes about because of it's the recompense for her sins and
because she thought it was her bomb that caused a bunch of deaths.
Right. But yeah, Jessie's great. Wedge is awesome. He's so goofy and so lovable.
He is.
And I didn't like Biggs at first in the first playthrough very much. I liked him a lot more this time around. He's definitely gets the short end of those three of Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge. He gets the short end of that stick as far as like characterization.
Yeah, he's to me he was kind of the most bland. He was just like, and the other member of Avalanche who just kind of fills you like I'm here role.
Yeah, almost like a straight man.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know. I don't think we needed a straight man, really. And then, they should have just given him a few more buddy scenes with Jessie and Wedge. Just, moments where... Because there are just a couple where, he and Wedge are being goofy together. I'm like, give me more of that. Give me more of them being, best friends.
And both Wedge and Jessie also get good contrasting scenes with Cloud. Because, obviously, you have the whole Jessie-Cloud kind of flirting relationship. Mm-hmm. And then you have the, I'm not your bro, Wedge and Cloud scenes. But, Biggs beyond being Biggs being oh man, Cloud's pretty awesome. I hope he sticks around. Doesn't really get anything.
Yeah, he fills an archetype you see in a lot of anime. It's hard to describe, but I know that character.
Yeah,
and that character is usually just kind of a throwaway, and that's fine. You gotta fall somewhere.
He fills the role fine. Yeah. He's obviously alive. Of the three, he would have been the most. Have been oh no, Biggs died.
Sorry, Biggs.
So sad.
Yeah. Let's see. Who else we got? Surprisingly, one of my other favorite glow-ups, Don Corneo. I thought that character was designed so perfectly. I'm like, yeah, that's Don Corneo. I thought the goofy over-the-top, acting animation.
I'll give you that he was designed perfectly, but I don't want to compliment him too much because he still made my skin crawl.
Oh, so crawling.
Oh my God.
The weird blonde
he was so crawly
thing.
So much that seeing just his original Final Fantasy VII character playing the game again, I was like, ah.
Yeah, that's so good. And then he survives, and you find him in the original game. He shows up again in Wutai. He's behind Shinra's there, the Turk specifically, and Corneo's there because he doesn't want he wants to stay on the good side. And we do meet him again briefly. And that's kind of a fun moment, too, actually. You get a little bit more of the gangster version of him rather than the pervy lech version, which I was like, okay, cool. This guy has to run an underworld. Because when you're doing all that stuff it was so weird. You had Leslie, who, technically worked for him directly.
Yep.
And so, of course, he just did what he was told. But then you had the madam lady. What was her name? Miss...
Was it not just Madam M?
Okay, Madam M. And then you had Chocobo Bill or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Who was like a Sam Elliott kind of like knockoff. I'm like, you guys seem. Oh, and then of course the Honeybee Inn guy. I'm like, you guys just seem way too normal and nice to be like finding his sex slaves for him.
Yeah.
Like it was weird, and I know it's supposed to campy and fun, but like talk about immersion breaking. That did it for me.
Yeah, Wall Market. Wall Market is probably to me best described as a couple very fun scenes interspersed with a lot of like let's just get through this.
It was very indulgent, and I know it was what some people wanted. It wasn't what I wanted. I didn't care for really any part of Wall Market until you get to Corneo's mansion, and then I start having a little fun again. But we'll get there in a sec when we go through the story. And then I think finally we'll talk about Sephiroth later. He'll have a lot of time to talk about him. But we have the Shinra execs. We've got President Shinra. We've got Heidegger, Scarlet, Hojo. My favorite, like, I don't want to glow up, but it's a weird, interesting characterization because he is kind of like this in the original game, is Palmer, the weird aerospace guy. So creepy looking. Like, he looks like death warmed over and then plumped up from, like, too much bloating. Did you have any thoughts about
very poetic
the
description.
Shinra execs?
I didn't. They at least kind of all struck me as what I remembered them being.
Yeah, like just how you might imagine them in a AAA
they were done well of AAA with voice acting. I'll be honest, the ones who I thought got some interesting attention were the Turks, particularly Reno and Rude, because we see a lot more Reno and Rude in this part of the game than we had previously, and there's some implications that my recollection is kind of exists in the original, mostly because like. Ultimately, especially I think Reno and Rude of all of them are just like, screw this eventually at one point in the original. But we're already seeing that with Reno and Rude, where they're like, they're having they're like, Hans, are we the baddies moment?
Yeah.
Like, especially at the Platefall where they're like, we are not good people for having done that. And you know, and who's the head of the Turks?
Tseng?
Yeah, saying is like, he's like, think of it this way: if you didn't do it, someone else would have to do it, and they'd have to feel guilty. And it was like, all right, so like
he's cold, man. That they gave him. He was always cold, but like he was the boss, but like
he was always stoic,
right?
In the original, but and it's just because we're getting to spend, I think, more time with him.
And I like it. I like that they're making the leader of this clandestine, hitman
essentially
squad,
like
basically.
like this secret police group that's the leader of them would have to be cold. But I'm enjoying getting to spend a little bit more time with Reno and Rude and seeing kind of the fact that their characters do have a bit more soul to them.
There's a fun Easter egg. It's in the fight on top of the plate where you get your Cloud Barrett Tifa. You're fighting Reno and Rude. If you defeat Reno first and Rude's left standing, he won't attack Tifa because apparently he has a crush on her. I guess there's a canon somewhere that he kind of likes Tifa. Like there's a small like throwaway line I think in the original that implies that he likes Tifa.
He likes Tifa.
And so like he won't attack her if she's not being controlled by you, I think, because obviously, going back to combat real quick, you couldn't switch to anybody without immediately getting all the aggro.
Everyone coming after you.
Yeah. I hated that. Like, how am I supposed to do anything? What's the point?
Well, again, especially as Aerith, to like sit there and like, all right, like you would think I'm gonna run Cloud up there and let Cloud engage, and then I can swap back to Aerith and like set up my wars so I can just start raining down fire Fire spells. No, everyone charges, weak little Aerith. You're like, this is ridiculous.
Pretty much instantaneously too. So anyway, that was a diversion.
No.
So yeah, that was characters. I mean, Red 13's already a really good glow up too, but we just don't get him for very long.
Yeah. He wall runs.
He wall runs, which is a 10 out of 10 for Sean. Yuffie wall runs all over the place. It's
Yuffie is best girl.
It's a primary mechanic. It's so much fun. Really kind of like in the same way that like all the tunnels slow things down, the wall running does the opposite. It makes things feel like all those like slow puzzle traversing through like factories and stuff feels so much better and fun because you could wall run, but then you could also like you would sometimes have to climb up like the grate that you're running on and then run the other way to get to the other platform. And so it was really cool because like when they first did it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this like twice, and then I was like, no, you're gonna do it the rest of the time. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Anyway, let's see. I think we'll hit the changes in the rest of the story overview analysis recap thing. So we'll start there, or rather, we'll start that now. All right, let's get into this story. We talked a little bit about the beginning earlier with the demo. So yeah, you do your classic raid on the Sector 1?
Sector 5.
Sector 5
reactor.
What's it called? Thank you, reactor. You blow it up. It blows up a lot worse than you thought. And a fun little twist that they added in this is that the Shinra people, you get your first view, I think, of both Heidegger and President Shinra. And it's clear that they're setting off like robots inside the reactor after you've skedaddled. So the bomb's going off and it's doing its bomby damage. Turns out Jesse did not miscalculate the ingredients, and it would have been just enough to disable it. But they make this huge explosion, and it's like, and that happens in the original, the giant explosion part. And Jesse gives kind of a throwaway line about like, oh, whoops, I guess the bomb instructions were a little off or whatever. And it kind of actually adds to this flippant nature you get with Avalanche, where instead this creates like a, oh no, what did we do?
What have we done? This like, it, yeah.
Yeah, so like Barrett, but then Barrett shows his colors like, no, this isn't on us, this is on them. Whatever happens, this is collateral damage. We're at war. This is his mindset. And so you go through the flaming wreckage on the top side on the plate, which is a fun little way to just kind of like see, walking animations and stuff, and get a feel for how areas are going to be, which is fairly tight. With like some options to go off the beaten path to find a chest here or there. But one of the coolest things that I think they added to this game was there's not a single line of dialogue that isn't spoken. All dialogue from every character in the game is spoken. There's not a single bit of read text that isn't just a menu, which is really cool. But also kind of annoying sometimes, especially if you're running around, because those people it's proximity based, and they'll just start talking. And they don't stop talking for a while, even though you're running like way past them. So it was cool, but I hope they tone it down a bit. So you make it home to sectors. Well, not home, because Cloud's just a transient at this point.
Well,
but you make it back to.
We still get our interaction with the flower girl here, right?
Oh, excuse me. Of course. Actually,
which is our first inkling that things aren't quite right.
Technically, the first inkling is that you run into Sephiroth in a flaming alley.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Sephiroth already kicks it off in a thing that never happened, which really should clue you in on what's going on. And Cloud attacks him, but then he's not there, or something like that. And then, yes, he runs into the flower girl, who is being assaulted by what, Sean?
Ghost. Or nothing. Take your pick.
The Whispers, the plot ghosts, the arbiters of fate.
The plot devices.
The plot devices. I listened to a podcast before I did ours, just so I could have a recap of the recap that I did. But like,
You're so much better prepared than I am.
I am.
I got 2 pages of notes. That's it.
It needed, or this is the first inclination, because again, you run into Sephiroth and you see these things that aren't in the originals. But like, what are the plot ghosts there for? They're always there to make sure the events of the original game happen. What are they doing to her then? They're holding her in place because you just got distracted by Sephiroth, which never happened in the original. So from the very beginning, the ghosts, you see like the meddling that is Sephiroth on the timeline.
Yes.
Which is actually kind of cool. But yeah, you fight those ghosts off. She's there. You have the flower exchange. It's very sweet. And then she has to run away, right? It's not just a parting. She just kind of like has to dip out.
No, she gets dragged away by the ghost.
Does she get dragged away? Oh, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, more plot meddling.
Like soldiers show up and she's going to stay, and then a ghost drags her off, and you can't go running after her because Shinra soldiers have showed up. And now you're kind of in the regular running for the soldiers bit from the original.
So yeah, you get your fighting with the soldiers, and then what? You just jump onto a train?
Yep.
And then you find... How does he get back to Sector 7?
He rides the train. He just
rides the train.
Yeah, this is where we get the whole like security badge bit and whatnot.
That's right.
From Jesse.
They go their separate ways. He gets on the train, which they're already on, and he does that cool little like
flip into the car. And then they all reunite on the train.
Right. So yeah, you eventually do make your way back to Sector 7, though, where you go to 7th Heaven, and you meet up with longtime no see friend Tifa, Cloud's childhood friend from Nibelheim. They haven't seen each other in what, roughly 5 years? Is that right?
Yeah, it's 5 years sounds right.
Okay. And then we go through, the rigmarole of reuniting. You can give her the flower or not, or do you have to give her the flower?
You can give her the flower, and I want to say you can give her or you can give Marlene the flower.
Yes,
I may not be
you're
right, but there's an option with the flower.
Right. Marlene is introduced, and she is adorable. Again, something they could have messed up considerably, but they got a good little voice actress for her, and she's super cute. You don't get to go down into the base where the pinball machine goes. I thought that was a very interesting decision, and I was really disappointed.
But you get to play darts instead.
You do get to play darts, and man, I was good at darts.
I was too. I got the luck up materia.
Yep, me too. The first time I didn't bother with the second time, but yeah, you get more information, or you get more screen time with Jesse, Biggs, Wedge, Barrett, Tifa. Tifa takes you to an apartment where you can stay the night at least for the next couple days or whatever. Introduces you to a very funny-looking, kind, familiar-sounding. I know I've heard her voice somewhere. Old lady landlady who runs the apartments. Her hair's like a broom.
Myrtle, something like that.
Yeah,
Myrtle?
yeah,
something like that.
Marl. It is Marl because that's
Marl.
right. Because there's a Marl in Chrono Trigger, and I remember when I was playing, I was like, "Oh, that's right. She has the same name as that." And I was wondering how to pronounce that, and that's how you pronounce it, Marl. But she makes some old lady comments about like Cloud leaving Tifa alone and not to like break her heart or something like that. And Tifa shows her to her room, mentions there's a weirdo next door named like Randall or something with an R, I think. Cloud goes to sleep. I don't think this happens right away, but at some point you do hear the guy next door and he sounds like he's dying.
Yeah.
And Cloud goes in, and it's one of the Genova experiments from the original game, you realize, because he's got this tattered black hood. He's got a number tattoo in his arm, and he's like, and it freaks Cloud out. Cloud thinks
he's Sephiroth.
That's right. He thinks he's Sephiroth. He goes to attack him. She sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, and then I think Tifa shows up and stops you.
Yeah, and then he just moments before you slice this dude in half. And then he proceeds to just go like, some more. It's like, okay, what are we doing? Are we just taking care of this guy? I don't even really know what's going on.
Yeah.
But at this point, you have the option to do some side quests. It was a solid attempt to make it make sense in the context of the game. Like, oh, if you're going to be a mercenary, you got to, get people's, you got to get your cred up and your PR, the public relations side of it. But it's just kind of stupid, in my opinion.
It's slow. Like, all of the side quests in this game, there's three side quest segments during the course of the game. They're all slow. Mm-hmm. There's a couple upsides to them. Like I said, I do appreciate the we're seeing Cloud be a mercenary, but it's still totally unnecessary. And so, thankfully, we pretty shortly after skip back to we pick up the job with Jesse, right?
Yeah, we're gonna do a job with the plans are to do another reactor job that gets made, but Cloud says pass. I'm not gonna go. But Jesse asks for a favor the night before, and it's pretty vague about it, but it's going to be her, Biggs, Wedge, and Cloud, and they basically go topside, and they go to Jesse's house, where she needs to steal her comatose, or was he sleeping?
He's comatose from radiation poisoning.
Basically, he falls into a giant vat of Mako.
And I think he's his limbs are gone too.
Ooh, that's even worse. But yeah, this guy is not well off. He's still alive, unfortunately, for his, quality of life. But basically, Jesse lured you there to steal her father's Shinra badge. Why he still has an active Shinra badge, I don't know, but he does. So maybe he isn't comatose. Maybe he's just a heavy sleeper. But you have a moment to kind of get some backstory on old Jessie there. You know that she and you hear a conversation happening in another room with her mom and Biggs and Wedge. Apparently Jessie's mom makes the world's best pizza. They're like, you gotta try it. Cloud's like, I hate pizza because I'm a stick in the mud. I don't know.
I hate pizza because I hate everything.
He does. He hates everything, but he gets the job done. But you learn that Jessie's her real passion was acting. She wanted to go be an actress at the Gold Saucer. and she had a small attempt at it, but then it didn't pan out. Her parents still think that's what she's doing. Instead, she's joined the eco-terrorist organization known as Avalanche.
Yep.
And she needs to steal from her father to get the card, because then we're going off to a weapons facility.
Yep, she needs more explosives.
Yes, because we got to make another bomb. And so it's just kind of like sneak thing. Did we do the...
Well, don't forget the motorcycle bit.
Don't forget the okay, that's what I thought. All right, so you do the motorcycle bit. Very similar to the one at the end of the original game, or at end of the Midgar section, but they're doing it now because they know you're going to have to do it later, and they want you to have a nice little, like, easier version of it. And it's pretty milquetoast, bare bones. Jesse's riding with you. Widge and Biggs are riding on another motorcycle. But then you meet a brand spanking new character, and he's the first significant new character that you meet. His name is Roche. He has an awesome mullet, and he is a soldier, like Cloud purports to be, and like Sephiroth before him, like Zack, all that. So it's kind of interesting because you don't get a lot of soldiers in any of the Final Fantasy VII media. Like, there are like 4.
Yeah,
Zack,
I mean,
Sephiroth,
there
and then
are
2 others.
Some soldiers that you fight that are just random encounters, but obviously they're not really characters. This is one of our few times to really sit with an active soldier in Shinra who isn't Sephiroth.
Yeah, but he's crazy. He's straight up Nomura type anime, and he's got this big red motorcycle, and he's It's a pretty fun fight. More like encounter. I wouldn't call it a fight because it's not especially like fighty. You fight him in a second though. But he's got a severe passion for Cloud immediately. Giant man crush. And I'll break away real quick. He shows up in intermission.
Oh, so does he?
Yuffie arrives in Sector 7, the Sector 7 slums. And as you're getting ready to leave, he's there shouting loudly so you can hear him in case you didn't see him. And when you talk to him, he's basically asking after Cloud, because this is happening just after the second reactor run. That's when the intermission story
happens.
starts. Mm-hmm. So like Barrett and Tifa come back to Sector 7 while Cloud's off with Aerith, and they don't know what's happened to him yet. That's when Yuffie gets there. Anyway, so Roche is like, hey, have you seen blah, blah, blah? And he's describing Cloud, and he's just like being, again, over the top dramatic, and then he wants to play the new little like board game that is the side quest. Like,
have you seen a guy who looks like he has a chocobo sitting on his head?
Is that what he says?
No, but that's what. There's some joke at some point in Final Fantasy VII where Cloud's hair style is compared to a chocobo.
You know, he might say that though. Like for a second, it sounded really familiar to the point I'm like, did you?
I clearly haven't played Intermission.
No, you haven't, because it's PS5 only. Anyway, he's there, again, looking for his lost love. Back to the original game. So you defeat him on the motorcycle battle, and he's like, till next time. And that's how he always talks. I love him. I love Roche. Roche is everything right about new additions to this game. How did you feel about Roche?
Roche felt very like Roche left, and I had this like, what the heck just happened? Like, what?
Right.
Because he, up until that point, I mean, obviously, like, there's a couple lighthearted moments, but the game is very, especially because you're playing Cloud, the game is kind of serious. Like, everyone is very serious. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of went through where Jesse was kind of like, I killed a bunch of people, and I feel terrible. And you're like, all right, well, that's... Right.
Her dad, just moments before that whole thing.
And then you're like, okay, now I have crazy guy firing lightning on a motorcycle. So like I found him a little jarring. But I'm kind of with you. Like, I didn't dislike him. But it was like what is this? Like, this isn't what this game has been setting me up to be ready for. Now, in hindsight, having played all of Remake now, he's maybe a little bit more in line given some other characters in Remake. Mm-hmm. But he's it's the first moment where I felt like I had a character who was like totally just like not in kind of the same thematic step as everyone else.
Right. Really disappointing he doesn't show up for the rest of the game. Like,
yeah,
that's not a joke. He shows up there and then you never see him again, and that was kind of weird. And you forget about him because you forget about a lot of stuff that happens at the beginning. After you get to a certain point, it feels like kind of 2 different games almost. But yeah, so you get to... Sorry, what?
Well, so you do the whole armory bit, which is fine. Mm-hmm. It basically ends up being Cloud gets to draw everyone out, and things don't go quite as according to plan. And then Wutai shows up.
No, Is
Well,
it Wutai?
it's the well, because what you find out is Wutai is funding Avalanche,
Yes.
and so it is the still Wutai supported branches of Avalanche.
Mm-hmm. And so you find
which
out
is just
that
weird.
well, it kind of makes sense because Avalanche. I don't know if they ever reference any additional members of Avalanche. I think Avalanche is literally buried in his crew in the original.
Yeah,
That's
it
what
is.
They call. Well, no,
I
I
think
think
so.
I'm. No, there's more. There is more because when they go to Cosmo Canyon with Red 13 and Bugenhagen, he's like, "This is where Avalanche was founded." So, like, at the very least, they learned from somebody else. But this ties into the intermission as well, because Yuffie is there to work with Avalanche, but not the what they refer to it as the splinter cell.
Yeah.
They call it a splinter cell because they're crazy. They're like, these people, they're willing to pay any price, and we're not. We want something to be left in the wreck. We don't want just wreckage. That's not what we're after. We're after ousting Shinra, and that's it. We don't have any qualms against, what Barrett would call co-conspirators, essentially. But it is interesting, I think, that they threw that in there in this game. I wonder how important it's going to be, though. I just don't. It's a fun thing, but I just don't understand where it's going. Like, what does it matter?
I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit later in theories, but there's a through line that kind of shows up starting after, really kind of, I guess, after the second explosion, especially with the plate dropping, that like Shinra is because obviously Shinra and Wutai fought a war a while back.
Yes,
and fairly recently, because that's the war that Sephiroth became the legend out of, that he is
there's
out of. But like,
what's the word? The arms something. There's peace.
An armistice,
ceasefire, armistice or a ceasefire or something like that.
But like Shinra is as Remake goes on, Shinra is stoking anti-Wutai sentiment and is almost like building their way towards, hey, we need someone to go fight to keep people from turning on us, and so like they are building that sentiment, which like I said, we'll get to it in theories, but it does lead into my one of like maybe this game going even further off the storyline than maybe than I would have initially expected.
Interesting. But yeah, you get saved by them. And then you make your cool getaway back to the slums via parachute. And you mentioned it earlier. Yeah, exactly. You get a fun scene where they're in tandem, but instead of you being in tandem with Jesse this time, you're in tandem with Wedge. Who's afraid of heights. And Wedge is constantly calling Cloud bro. And there's a great line where, Cloud says, "I'm not your bro," and then he just shoves him off, shoves them off. He jumps off before he's ready. And there's just this cute, kind of like really like adventure movie scene of, the three of them are friends, but Cloud's becoming a fast friend, at least on their side. It's a kind of a one-sided relationship. But you're seeing like kind of the beauty of the city, even though it's disgusting and corrupt on almost all levels, and they're draining the planet dry. It's a cool shot above the city, especially in the PS5 version.
Oh, I bet.
With extra lighting. But then, you get back to the slums. There's a cute scene between Jesse and Cloud as he walks her back to her apartment. She basically says, "Hey, you can't come in tonight, but maybe tomorrow we can go on a date because my friends aren't gonna be here." And it's like, "Oh,
I'll make you a pizza."
Make you a pizza, exactly. And Cloud doesn't say no. Or he gets an option.
You get the option, and I think I picked the option that was like the closest you could say to yes. He doesn't say yes.
Leaves the option open.
He gives like a non-committal, yeah.
Yeah. So you go to sleep. You wake up in the morning. Tifa wakes you up to say something. You're going to be on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You're going to be on your way, but then there's a commotion, and there's a plot ghost attack down by Seventh Heaven, and you fight them. And the reason they're there this time is to injure Jessie, because she does not go on the second bomb run, the second reactor bombing run. And so it was going to be Tifa, Barrett, and Jessie. And this time, now because Jessie's been injured, she like sprains her ankle or something.
Yep.
It's going to be Cloud. He steps in.
And that's the thing is, the moment she sprains her ankle, they all leave. Once again, they have fulfilled their plot device purpose.
Right. And like funnily enough, there's a nice little like, in this weird cosmic way, there's this nice little contextualization. If you didn't like it or it didn't make sense, if you're watching Loki right now on Disney Plus, things seem similar and familiar at least. And it's like, okay,
variant Sephiroth.
Maybe it's not that dumb, but yes, he is the variant. All right, now that we're back from our Loki tangent that Sean and I just had, where were we?
All
right, plot ghosts.
Yep.
Plot ghosts prevent Jessie from doing something she wasn't supposed to do. And then you go on the bombing run, and this is the prequel to the pacing issues.
We have a cool moment in Seventh Heaven because Barrett is having this Barrett and Tifa. Well, Barrett's having this what are we going to do? We're down a person, but we have to do this because he's fanatical. And Aerith kind of talks to Cloud, and Cloud has I will do this, but you have to pay me.
Tifa.
Yeah, you're gonna have to pay me, but then he offers he at some point he knows how much money they have, so he doesn't ask for more than that. It's a first little inclination of good guy Cloud. Underneath Cloud's gruff, I'm a mercenary just doing this to get by exterior is here is a good guy who actually does believe in this. And it's to me it was heavily indicated that it was done because of the night before he had with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge.
I think so. But also if you know the story of Final Fantasy VII, Cloud's got nowhere else to go.
True.
He's not admitting it, maybe even to himself, but what else is he gonna do? If he can find a life and carve out a life, one that pays even, all the more better for him. And I think that's another part of it too. It's he's slowly, or rather quickly, finding a family that he didn't have.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the little adventure before, which is one of my favorite new long segments. I loved the topside stuff with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge.
Yes.
It was one of my favorite parts in the entire game. No joke. Okay. You do your bombing run. So you can't just go to the reactor. You can't just get on the train. You have to go through a really lengthy underground travel sequence.
Yeah.
And it's the beginning of many of these. And I'm just
it's the first of the padding.
Couldn't you just cut this out or cut it down? Why did we have this really long trudge through? Because then you have to go through a factory, right? Before you even get inside the reactor. Is that right? Where you have to you shut the lamps off to get across or something.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You have to shut the underside lamps off in order to have, because you got to shut the lamps off in order to have enough power that in order to allow you to activate elevators in order to get. Yeah, oh God,
so you've got one
had purged that.
Yeah, so you've got one, and it wasn't so bad the second time because I knew exactly what I was doing. I was ignoring, because what they do is they put these little oh, there's some material off in the distance, except you got to go out of your way to get it. I'm I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't need it. I know I don't need it. So you've got the one padding situation with the underground part, and you've got the next padding situation after the train or whatever, because they get caught on the train, they go through that whole thing, and you do get this cool moment. No, that happens earlier. I won't go over that, but Barrett gets in an argument with a Shinra employee, and it's good character building. Because Barrett's the best. But you go on the train, and then you go through this factory thing, and then you're in the reactor, and you think, okay, well, that part didn't take very long in the original, and it did in this one. And it's kind of if they had just done two of them, but preferably one where the reactor is the biggest portion, that would have been fine by me. Why did we have 3 segments of trudging through puzzles and really slow moving
where we're not getting any really story or character development out of it?
Yes, for the most part you are correct. There is a lot of really good banter. And it's the only thing I can say that is good about it, but I just hope they did this because they knew they had to stretch Midgar. I hope that because we can kind of, I don't want us to rush through the rest of the series or the rest of the story of the original, but I don't want too many new things. I can't do 6 parts. We gotta start cutting the fat, and I think they will because of what we'll talk about later. So you get into the reactor, and it is fun because you get to go through and you see the airbuster, which is the boss you're gonna fight at the end.
The whole robbing the airbuster of components was a nice way to kind of elevate that boss fight.
Yeah. Now I don't know how hard it is with them though, because both times I definitely made it as easy as I could.
Oh yeah,
finding
me too.
All the cards. But yeah, it's fun you get so many of those cards to access the computers, and you can find some extra ones if you investigate areas. But it lets you pick how fast is he going to attack, what kinds of attacks is he going to use, and
he's going to have his big bomb attack.
Exactly. Or here's an elixir, here's just some components, and it turns out it's a really good item. So you go through all of that, you fight Airbuster, and it's a pretty good fight. You know, they put you on either side of him, just like in the original. Now, of course, there's a bit more maneuvering, but overall, it's a really good boss fight. And then Mr. Shinra Man, President Shinra shows up, and he has this in his hologram sense. He doesn't show up in person because that would be ridiculous. Why did he do that? But he blows up the bridge, or the airbuster does, and then Cloud falls.
Yep.
And he falls into the church where he meets Aerith. And it's super cute and super sweet.
It is.
And pretty much exactly like it was.
It is, but the walk on the rooftop scene is a little more dragged out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And this is this is where I want to give this game credit. There are a few moments of this game where they stretched out things and let things slow down, and it was done well. And this is one of them where it's like that ability to, like, after this kind of hectic fight, to kind of like slow down and let us linger with these two characters, which let's be honest are probably the two, Sephiroth aside, the two most iconic, certainly the two most iconic characters that you could play as from the series. Was very enjoyable, especially because Cloud is so, like, it's interesting to see the different ways Cloud behaves around, like, Tifa, Aerith, and Jessie throughout the course of this game. And he is like both, like, utterly uncomfortable around Aerith, but also, like, has that, like, I must protect this person attitude.
And he has, and, like, you get a quick flashback. I don't know if you've gotten it yet at this point, but at some point you get a flashback of Tifa and Cloud at the water tower. Classic scene, really, really, really well done in the remake too, because you guys got the stars in the kind of country town of Nibelheim, and you see that Cloud, he's, again, this is a spoiler cast of the entire series, but Cloud has some mental issues in which he has adopted certain memories, or at least persona of Zack.
Yep.
He's not exactly who he says he is. It's certainly not his past as a soldier, etc. But Cloud is, the kind of broody, inward, very Squall-like kind of guy. Zack is, bubbly and bouncy and fun and happy-go-lucky, and you never really see that level from Cloud going all the way to the flashback where, nothing bad has happened to him yet.
Yeah.
So I agree with you about the rooftop. I just think that it takes too long to get back to anything with anybody else. Like,
yeah, I would say once you're off the rooftop, and now you got to get to Aerith's house, and then the once again doing the side quest in Sector 6, all that is once again like, okay. I mean, obviously the side quest never bothered me because I was choosing to sit here and slow the game down and do the side quest.
Right.
But, like, when you decide to go back to 7, and, like, the length of the going through the sewers was way too long again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What was like 2 screens in the original is like 30 minutes of trudging minimum through an area.
Right. So you've got the rooftop from the church after the Reno fight, which is cool, but pretty basic.
And we
so
see the
ghost.
Do we see the ghost again? No, I don't remember if we see the ghost, but this is where we get the inkling that Aerith knows more than she should, because she stops you from killing Reno.
Yes, she does. Yeah, and there is that, and as the story goes through more and more, you get a stronger idea, and I think it's because Aerith is getting more and more knowledge. Like, I don't think she gets an info dump right away, but by the end she knows what's up.
It's like beginning to leak through to her.
Right. When she first touches the ghosts as an ancient, she clearly has a connection with these other planet beings. And something, whether it was intentional or not, has been passed into her knowledge-wise, and so she's starting to be self-aware of this remake, of this altered timeline.
Yep.
But from the church to Sector 6, you've got that little, there's some fighting, not a lot, but it is extended. Then, if you choose, you have the side quests, and then you have the whole thing staying at the, going to her mom's house and staying the night, and then you have to go through the Sector 5 underground to get to Sector 7, which is weird. And then, that's when you finally meet Tifa. So all of that, it's just a lot. And then you still haven't, like, even gotten to Wall Market yet. And then you get to Wall Market, and it's crazy. It looks cool, but I just didn't like any of it. And I hated Johnny. Johnny's stupid. Johnny is the opposite of Roche. Roche, awesome.
Johnny's
stupid.
in the original, too.
I know, that's the worst part.
He's got like
here's
one line of dialogue in the original, I think.
people have exactly. Maybe he shows up a couple times at least in
Does he?
Midgarth, not the whole game, but yeah, he recognizes Sprite, his model at least. But it's all of Wall Market. I've heard it described, and not having played these games but seen enough of them, I can pretty much agree with it. Is that Wall Market all of a sudden turns into a Yakuza game? Like, this is how Yakuza games go. You just walk around in a seedy place and you do random stuff for really weird people. Johnny is right out of a Yakuza game. And so to me, it just felt weird.
It did. And the only thing I'll say is thankfully there's like from start to finish, going through Wall Market, whether on the original or on the remake, while the mechanics of getting through that segment are different, the story beats are all identical. Nothing really changes between the two games.
No, you got some new characters and you've got that weird arena fight, but
but at the
irrelevant.
end, you don't have any other, like, there's no new larger knowledge about the story, and you end in the sewer with Aerith and Tifa.
Yep. Corneo's mansion goes the same, and
yep. It plays differently, but what it does for the story is identical. Like there's nothing new added to the story with regards to the any remake type storylines. You go through all the story beats are the same. It's just how you exactly walk through them are the same are different.
Right. And then, like you said, you got to go through the sewers. Okay, and then the train graveyard's next. Oh my gosh, the train gate graveyard. I know you hate Hojo's lab, but I gotta give.
I hate the train gate. No, the train grave. Well, we'll get to it. The problem with Hojo's lab was I was done. The train graveyard is the worst. Hojo's lab has bad. Maybe some worse because from the game should have been wrapping up and then it slowed down, but the train graveyard is awful.
It is. It's like, just don't make the sewers that long, or then don't make the train graveyard that long. But they do this again and again and again. They made 2 segments that didn't need to be long, and it's such a mood killer. Because what do we race into Sector 7 for, Sean?
Because Shinra's going to drop the plate and kill everyone.
That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But no, let's stop and talk to... These aren't even the plot ghosts. These are
ghosts.
Literal ghosts that Aerith is talking to. And then, even though she can talk to them, they still want to kill us.
Yeah.
They're not stopping us. They want to kill us.
And then they kidnap her at the very end, and we see child Aerith, and it I think it was supposed to be meaningful, but it really didn't do anything for me.
No, not at all. Because what do we have to
But I
hear
did get my
over again?
tiebreaker. That meant that I got to have my little outside Elmira's nighttime scene with Aerith instead of Tifa. But
oh, well, okay, that's fair. Oh, one good thing about this entire thing is we get to see... What'd you say?
I said no matter. It could have gone anywhere, that tiebreaker.
The only good part, and I mentioned it earlier, was banter and the characters kind of just growing as comrades. You get Aerith and Tifa meeting for the first time.
Yes.
And what could have been... The relationship isn't cold in the original, but it's certainly not fleshed out. The only person that has a relationship with Aerith in the original game is Cloud.
Yeah.
Bareth owes her, but he doesn't interact with her.
Yep. And even, there's a little bit of that, are you his girlfriend? Are you not? Where do we fall out? There's the line there, and for lack of a better phrase, the dungeon in Corneo's mansion, and then it just, as far as I can tell, it basically is never addressed again in Final Fantasy VII, as I recall.
Not really. I mean, we'll find out soon as you play through, but it's not significant for sure.
Yeah.
But in this, they become fast friends, and they talk about going shopping and calling Cloud their pack chocobo, which is just the best. And it's one of the only times I like Tifa is when she's talking with Aerith, because she becomes a human instead of a caricature of an anime character. And she's girly. So again, there's your perfect opportunity for her to play off a more girly character and then have her be tough other places. And then, yes, break down and be vulnerable with Cloud later if that's the scene that you get or that's what you want. But yeah. No, I don't... Whatever. Get to the plate. Plate's going to drop. Corneo gave you that information before he dropped you in the sewer. And that plays out pretty normal. Wedge doesn't drop from the top of the entire thing. He does fall down a flight of stairs or two, and he
Well,
gets
no,
pretty injured.
he's falling like he is, but they have the little like grappling hooks, and he shoots the grappling hook, and it
That's
manages to like
right.
slow his fall. But I honestly, I don't know if it came across playing the original when he like just fell in front of me. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Wedge is basically dead right there. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
I mean,
forgot
like,
about
I
that.
don't think he is. I think
He
he's
isn't.
definitely like
They're-
hurt.
Like he is because that's Aerith is supposed to take him away and then go get Marlene because he's not quite dead, but it's also like oh because that's the last you see of him in the original. You're like oh yeah he was probably dead. Yeah, he was dead. All right.
And then the plate falls and he's dead anyway.
Yeah.
And then you make your way up the tower. Like you said, Aerith is not with you. At some point, you're going to control Aerith as she runs because you reunite with her. And then she gets sent off to Sector 7
To save
the
Marlene.
slums to save Marlene by Tifa. She's like, there's a little girl. I need you. She's like, I'm on it. Let's go. But there's a really stupid, annoying, long sequence where you get caught behind burning debris everywhere. And then you find another little girl.
Ghost walls for some reason.
Yeah, it's just like, what's the point? Just let us get to stupid seventh heaven. We gained nothing from it. And it wasn't even that long, but it was long enough for me to get annoyed, but not long enough to pad. And so, it's just tension building, I guess. And maybe part of that is us not coming at it from the perspective of someone who's never played this game before.
Maybe.
Like the original, I mean. Like, they have to still kind of write it, and probably the sequel, too, we'll see. Like, someone who's... although, for the sequels, no one's going to have played that game before, because we're going in totally different directions. Anyway, really dumb. She makes it there. Then the weirdest thing in the game happens, even weirder than Rose showing up and then never coming back, is she meets Marlene. Marlene's afraid. Aerith has a very disarming personality, of course, and so she immediately makes friends with Marlene, touches her, and then seemingly passes her knowledge to her. What is that about?
I don't know. It's never like Aerith goes, shh, and then it's never addressed in the rest of the game.
Right, like she calms her with the great burden of knowledge somehow. Like maybe it just shuts her up. Like, oh, her little piece.
Terrible things are going to happen. Also, I'm going to die. Don't tell anyone.
Anyway, I think that's also the time where we get this scene with Sung. He shows up, offers her, he's like, I got you in the corner, and she makes the deal. And eventually she will go with Shinra, as they've always wanted. And I was really hoping this game would explain why she had to go willingly, because they just keep her as a prisoner. Hojo's ready to just, dissect her from the get-go and turn her into, a breeding puppet. So why exactly did they need her to come willingly? Yeah, it's stupid.
I got nothing for you.
It doesn't make any sense. The morals of the Turks. The Turks have one code, and that's we don't kidnap people unwillingly. I don't know. But so got back to the plate. You're running up the stairs. You get separated from Tifa at one point for some reason.
Well, because Cloud immediately runs up, and then Tifa is looking after Wedge, and then is gets him initially looked after by Aerith before Aerith goes off to get Marlene, and then she follows up after him.
Gotcha. So yeah, there's some really annoying fights. I think Cloud runs into an injured Biggs without Tifa, and he kind of says his goodbye there. Yeah, and then Tifa joins up with him. Then they run into Jessie, who's dying. You have a very heartfelt scene.
Oh,
and
poor Jessie.
She dies. She definitely dies there. I think Wedge is like, go on without me. And then when Cloud runs off, some Shinra soldiers come up and he can get his last stand scene, and that's pretty cool and pretty sad. But yeah, the Jessie scene is super sad.
And Jessie's doing pretty good holding her own with her grenades, and then the plot ghosts basically screw her over and blow her up. And then we find her injured with her whole her heartfelt scene with Cloud.
Yeah, because she feels bad about dying. She feels bad about killing the people that she thinks she killed.
Yep.
With her extra explosive. She loves Cloud for whatever that means in such a short time. And then Tifa's crying over off to the side, and then she dies, and everybody's mad. And you run up the tower more because Barrett's up there, just like in the original. He's shooting off stuff. It's all of Sector 7's avalanche. I don't think they're avalanche per se, but they're definitely
the neighborhood watch.
The neighborhood watch,
guys.
exactly. And you're seeing some familiar NPCs getting offed and stuff. And so you make it to the top. There's a helicopter with Reno and Rude, and they're kind of laying down some suppressive fire. They jump out. You have a fight. Plate falls. Anything majorly different here?
Don't think so. I think it all pretty much plays all on the same beats.
Yeah, you get to use the grappling hook to escape instead of the stupid like random like.
No, you don't use the grappling hook. You use it's like a platform on like a it's essentially like a rappelling line on a what's the things people like to do, but it's a big line and you go down. You're on a platform and the platform goes flying through. So thankfully, at least this time, you're not all just like holding on to Barrett. You're on a platform together.
Gotcha. All right. For some reason, I thought the grappling hook came into play there.
No, because grappling hooks come into. Well, we need the better grappling hooks here later on for the wall climb.
True. So plate falls. They end up outside of Sector 7, or mostly outside of it, behind the rubble, just like before. And then Barrett's scene, which was always pretty, like, oh man, he just lost everybody, everything in his life, just gone. Whoa. Give him an Oscar. God. Give him an Oscar.
Yeah,
He thinks his daughter's dead.
His friends are all dead, and he feels guilty for it. And and even knowing that Marlene was okay, it was still like, oh man, like because you could empathize with Barrett right there and what he's feeling.
Mm-hmm, absolutely,
because he played it so well.
And then like I don't know, maybe this is the heinous person in me, but when Tifa's like, "We did this," he's like, "No, we didn't. Shinra did this, and I'm gonna kill them all," basically. And I was like, "Yeah, we are." But then somebody tells him that Marlene's probably okay, and you guys.
Hey, quick question: when the plate falls, we see like a Moogle be like cry over it.
You see the cat. You see Kate Sith, Kat Shi, whatever I'm going to call Kate Sith.
All right, yeah, okay. Because you'd also said that like Tifa or Yuffie had shown up in like a Moogle outfit. I was like, wait, was that her? Because I thought it was supposed to be Kate Sith.
She does witness it. Like, at the very end of her thing, something tragic has just happened. She runs out of the Shinra headquarters, and she sees the fiery inferno that is
oh my God.
Plate 7 falling, but from
rough
above.
Day for Yuffie.
And she's just like, she's like, her best friend just died. Not best friend, but her comrade just died. And she's like running out in tears, like, you stupid idiot, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like watching it, and presumably all of the friends that she made in Avalanche who were like helping her in Sector 7 are now dead too. And so she's just... It is all coming crashing down on her too.
Oof.
But yeah, you see Kate Sith, who is at least in the original controlled by Reeve, that really hard on his sleeve like city planner guy.
Yep.
I kind of hate that character.
Yeah.
In the original, but really in this one too, like he's just this sad sack loser. Like, what are you doing? Who is this like lover of people that works as an executive in Shinra? It makes no sense, and it breaks my immersion. Like, I can't believe that this guy was hired to this position.
I always assumed that you actually needed one person who was competent at doing their job and had to do the jobs that no one else at Shinra wanted to do. Because all the rest of them all seem to be working on their own little like preferred projects. And so that's the guy that they pawned it all off on.
That makes kind of sense, but again, the whole like he cares too much thing.
Yeah.
It just and so like so you see him, presumably he's seeing it all through the eyes of that doll that he controls through like supposedly science, but it's magic. Like what is this golem that you've made?
Same thing.
Exactly. So they make their way to Elmira's. She gives them the backstory on Aerith. Mm-hmm. Which is nice. It's pretty much exactly as it is at the beginning, but you get to see it acted out, and that's nice.
Oh God, though, like Aerith, like the Aerith mom dying there hit me so much harder in the remake.
Yeah, for sure, because you can see her face instead of nothing. Yeah, that's
that was rough.
Pretty moving.
That was hard
because her mom's dead, and she's really sad about it. But then she's her quirky self.
Somewhat okay with it because Earth speaking or planet speaking to her.
Yeah, planet. She's going back to the planet. Yeah, Barrett's reunited with Marlene. He's like, I gotta go save her. Elmira, for some reason, is like, don't go save my daughter. You're gonna make things worse. And they're like, sorry, we can't do that because first we have to murder all of Shinra.
Yeah.
And second, we love Aerith. She's our best friend. Now, how do you get this scene with Aerith if she's gone at this point? Because this is when you get a scene with Tifa, or is that a different scene that I'm
Nope, it's the scene. It's a little weird. It's like the spirit of Aerith is somehow able to come and visit Cloud in his dreams. It's definitely a little like it's a very touching scene, but it's also very hand wavy.
Well, if we're
it
going
is-
to do that, then why can't I have Ghost Jesse? Stupid.
presumably because Aerith is an ancient, is what I'm going to go with.
No, of course. That's exactly the reason.
I think this is a scene where, Aerith is like, hey, Cloud, don't fall in love with me. Like, you're not allowed to fall in love with me.
Oh, okay.
It's a very...
Man, that's too pivotal. I think both of those scenes being like, I mean, you can just go watch it or whatever. Like, have you seen the Tifa one?
Yes, because this is Tifa's like, I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this.
Right. This would be awesome. I mean, it's a good scene, but it would have been much better if we didn't already get a mopey doesn't know she's strong enough Tifa the entire game.
Yeah.
And then there's a weird moment where like Cloud's like they're hugging, they're in an embrace, much closer than a friend hug, but there's nothing like weird about it until she's like, Cloud, you're hurting me. I'm like, what? Why? Why is he hurting her? Why did he lose himself in a hug? Like, because he's mad too, because things that he suppressed or forgotten or whatever are coming up.
Yeah. No, the air scene is very touching. With the whole like, but and then she just kind of like disappears in kind of a Northern Lights kind of effect,
like the Mako.
And the Mako effect, and then she's gone, and somehow she was able to come because originally because Elmira is so adamant that like they'll let her go. I was like, oh, apparently they let her like come have one last trip to see her mom, and she's here right now. And then she like magically fades away, and I was like, nope, that was a little weird, but also still had parts of a scene that were very touching, and
technically makes sense in the context of the game they've made.
Yeah, enough of it was hand wavy enough to work.
Now comes maybe the second. No, this is the third worst part of the game. So you got to get you got to get topside, but apparently there's just no way to do it by train. There's no more sneaking that can be done. And this is true in the original too. You have to do this kind of convoluted thing. You have to go up the wall.
I mean, in the original, you just like, you climb up a thing, you buy some batteries and climb up a rope, but yeah.
But the same idea is that for some reason, we can't go the way normal people go. There's just no way we could possibly sneak past it. We have to go this dumb, dangerous way. But like you said, in the original, it's like, well, we got a battery, we climb up. It's like a 10-minute thing, tops. In this, we get to go back to Wall Market and find that stupid Leslie guy. Then we get to go back into our favorite place, the sewers, and find Don Corneo, which, granted, is a pretty fun scene. And then you fight that stupid boss again, the one that you fought in the sewers originally, because apparently it's his pet. Corneo gets away. Leslie's like, whatever, here's the thing I promised you. You're like, we didn't need to do this. And then you get to the wall, and this is your point of no return, sort of. You can't go back to any of the other stuff you've done. Not that the game's anywhere near being over yet.
Yep.
You climb the wall.
This is my frustration, because you get the like, hey, once you go over the wall, there's no going back. And like in every other game, when you get to like, this is it, there is no going back. You on the straight climb up to the climax. The trek to the climax of the game has begun, and that is not the case here.
And it should have been. It should have been like a 3-4 hour octane fueled wild crazy ride.
Yeah, with a 65 floor run up, which should have been the only break in the pacing.
If you chose to do it that way, because I did it on my second. And it's kind of dull too, though. Like, it's not exact. Anyway. Before we get there, you do this wall climb thing, which is again it's just more like it's a corridor, but you're going up instead. It's probably the most like confusing corridor ever too, because you got to use this grappling hook, which is like, okay, I guess that's kind of fun. It's like it's the same as Yuffie's wall running, but so plodding and clunky that it just kills the pacing. You fight one of my least favorite bosses at the top, and then you get into the Shinra headquarters, and you can make the choice to do the stairs, which I did the first time, and I prefer because at least it's funny.
It was funny.
Just like in the original, and
I
didn't
mind the stairs. Like the stairs were funny. It's what comes after the stairs that annoyed the heck out of me.
I didn't do the stairs the second time because I thought it might be fun. Turns out it's not. You get in the elevator and you have like 2 encounters because like they open the elevator, they see you, and they just immediately attack you. They don't like you look weird and out of place, but I don't know, maybe your faces are plastered everywhere for Shinra soldiers to see. I don't know. Because later in intermission, Yuffie and Sonon do the exact same thing, And until Scarlet enters one of them and can clearly tell that they're Wutaians, nobody cares. Like, they bump into 2 other people, and it's just like, whatever. There's some weirdos looking like ninjas, but I don't care.
I didn't realize it was cosplay day at the office.
Exactly. So you're at Shinra HQ. Eventually, you get up to a certain floor where nobody is, and this is the restricted area. And then they force you to do some stupid mini games with Tifa on some bars, and it's like, what was the point of this?
Admittedly, the original had some stupid mini games at this point too.
It did.
The whole like press A and like with the guards walking and all that was like, oh my god.
Yeah, that was dumb, and that nothing like that exists in this, which is interesting.
No, you just get Tifa doing acrobatics instead. That is long and tedious.
At best, it's foreshadow because you see the car and the motorcycle that they're going to use later when they're making their getaway, but like that wasn't necessary, just not necessary at all. You make it further in. Do you go through Hojo's maze before or after you run into Aerith?
You do Hojo's maze after Aerith.
Okay.
Because they split the party into Red,
That's right.
Barrett, and Cloud, and then Tifa and Aerith.
I finished this game less than 2 weeks ago, and I've already forgotten so much of it now because it's bad, because I'm old and my brain is dying. You get a lot of Shinra execs though, which is fun, but for the most part played pretty straight. It's just nice to see them in their
you get the whole meeting like we did in the original, and it plays out, but it is nice to see their characters brought into the modern moment.
Right. You see Palmer, who mentions Sephiroth not by name.
Yeah.
But it's indicated
and that he saw him.
There is a scene where you don't see him, but you see him, and he's got some tea on his saucer, and he like freaks out. And he's like, he's here,
and nobody believes him.
Which is nice because like in the original, he would have been just walking around. Have we seen him since the beginning?
We saw him in the beginning. We saw him because we meet another one of the Genova experiments with Aerith. And we might see him then.
Yeah, I remember that now. And that's where you go to fight Rude on that one-on-one. Anyway, you eventually get caught and thrown into Aerith's cell, which was always a weird choice, I think. Like, here's this ancient that we want to protect.
Put them all together.
Put them all in there. I mean, I don't think they have their weapons, but they might have their weapons. I can't remember. Barrett certainly does. They didn't take his gun arm.
I mean, you can't really take Tifa's weapons away.
You can't. And at this point, you've also met up with Red 13, the classic thing where he attacks Hojo instead of you. Then,
but he's rabid when you first see him.
That it's really unclear. I got that impression, but it's like, is he just mad at Hojo?
I don't know, because Aerith like touches him and it calms him, and I always took it that some ancient stuff was going on there.
But did she like awaken him, like sentient wise? Because that doesn't make any sense.
That's kind of what I got. But you're right; it doesn't make a ton of sense. No, it doesn't. But it's what it looks like.
It does.
Yeah.
Now, she certainly passed a lot of her ancient knowledge to him, which make the fact that she can't. This makes the Marlene thing make even less sense. Like, okay, she can touch people and convey this knowledge. Why'd she do it with Marlene, not others? Who knows yet?
Yeah.
But then she does it with Red 13, who his race is connected to the planet as well in a way. They are guardians of a sort. I hope they flesh his people out, because he's the last of his kind. But I hope they flesh out like the purpose of his people more, because I always thought it was cool. You had the ancients, but you also had, these tiger dog things, and it's like let's what are they? Let's talk about those, but we don't. Oh well. But it makes sense then that an ancient might touch him and he would be able to know it. Like maybe only they could communicate that way. But again, we've already seen her do it with Marlene.
Yeah, but we don't know who's Marlene's mother is in the remake.
No, we don't. She's not a nobody, but she's just a person in the original. We know who her mother is.
Yeah.
She's just
dead. I don't know.
Yeah. So immediately love Red 13. Love the voice they chose. Love his characterization. Love the immediate kind of like bristly nature he has with most of the party members, but especially Barrett. Barrett's like, what is this thing? I don't like it.
Yeah.
But then we go through Hojo's stupid, mirror maze
Three-door maze thing. The mechanical flying snake thing, who was just a throwaway enemy in the original, gets to be a mini boss battle.
Yeah, that was kind of cool, and it wasn't too hard, so I wasn't like irritated with it.
Yep.
But you do meet Sephiroth. Genova, the remnants of Genova, are on display in this giant underground laboratory, which is a lot more fitting than this weird tank kind of shoved off to the side of the storage area.
Shoved in a corner. Like, yeah, we'll do something with that eventually.
Like, we don't know what this is. No, that's the thing that you use to make your super soldiers. I'm pretty sure you know exactly what this is. But you meet Sephiroth, at least a form of him. Cloud attacks him, and then you fall, and that's what instigates this nonsense, like, party split.
Yep.
You make your way back up eventually, and you realize that Sephiroth has stolen Genova away.
Is it all of her? Like, he didn't just take her head this time, right?
The head happens in the past. That scene is a flashback.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, she doesn't have her head, because in the original, Barrett's like, where's her bleeping head?
Yeah.
It's just like a nude female-esque body, missing an arm, like, like almost like a classic statue, but it looks all fleshy and weird.
Yep, and then it has no head.
Exactly, and no head. But he's stolen her away. There's a bunch of goop you follow instead of blood. There's the equivalent scene where you wake up in your cells, but like they're open, and he's gone on a murder spree.
Yep.
That's not here, which I think is stupid. Like, this is not, like, I don't know, I guess maybe you didn't want to show so much gore or violence, but this is not as intimidating, at least in my opinion, especially for a first-timer.
Yeah.
The way they talk about Sephiroth and build him up in the original, and then the blood trail, and then you still don't even see him. All you see is the sword in the President later. It's,
yeah.
So
good. That's a good point. He's not as well built up this time, if it's your first take, than he is. But, like, and like it's pretty good, because like him popping up is like, who is this guy? He's got my main character rattled. But then you're right. Like, you never fully understand just how powerful Sephiroth is supposed to be.
Right. He knows too much at this point, and that's necessary but annoying. Like, I do not like omniscient Sephiroth.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier about like character changes, so I'll talk a little bit about him now, since he's, starting to show up in a major way. Sephiroth also has some character assassination, where he's been pigeonholed as just like this god being, and he's too cool for school. And he is those things, but like, he's still very mortal. He's attempting to become immortal, like all Final Fantasy bosses, but he hasn't gotten there yet through a large portion of the original game. And you kind of just get this thing, like, he hates Cloud because Cloud was the one that like almost killed him back in the past. And so I kind of just get this feeling like, I hate this guy so much that I'm going to potentially ruin my plans by making sure he's the one that suffers the most. It always felt like a vendetta. Like, why does he care about Cloud? Because he's pissed at him. But everything...
Sephiroth is almost this, like... My recollection, like, don't get me wrong, he was intimidating, but there's this aspect of Sephiroth in the original that he is like this, like, he's this lost child type of character.
He is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, he's put this fat together, and he's very deadly, but like, he's a very simple, emotional character who is basically just like, things I like, what I thought I was lied to, and I'm angry, and I'm going to destroy everything because I'm angry. There's not a lot to Sephiroth's motivations for his grander plan in the original game.
No, not too much. You get teeny tiny pieces, and it's probably the best thing that they call it the compilation. Everything that is Final Fantasy VII that isn't, well, including the original game, but usually like things like Dirge of Cerberus and Advent Children, etc. You get a lot of backstory on like, and in Crisis Core, Crisis Core does a really good job of showcasing what you just explained. He's just kind of this automaton. He has he's emotionally stunted, but in a mature way, if that makes any sense. And then you kind of get to see, because so much of it takes place during that time frame, you see his mental breakdown more than just like a quick scene. He goes from normal dude to crazy person in the original, basically, once he finds out what he thinks he is anyway.
Yep.
And he's not even right about it. Like, that's the funniest part. He's not even really right. And that's kind of a retcon, but his idea of what happened to him and what he isn't actually true. And so he's like lost his mind over a falsehood. Anyway, you get through the labs, whatever. You fight Genova at the end?
You fight like a part of Genova.
Right, a piece of Genova, because you'll fight Genova a handful of times. Hard fight. those tentacles, man, didn't like them.
I was at mastery at this point. I like it, yeah, it was a little bit longed out, but I quickly figured out and kicked butt in that fight.
Yeah. In my original playthrough, didn't die a lot. Died sometimes, but I definitely did lose this fight the first time. And then you make it to the top. The president's thing. He's not there, but you hear somebody. There's a window broken and there's a door open, and you go outside and you see President Shinra hanging off of the rafters.
And it's worth noting this is where we found President Shinra stabbed through by Sephiroth in the original game.
Correct. Yes. So already things are quite different. I'm sure ghosts have appeared in Whisper, and they've mentioned the Whispers. People know what they are, or they've seen them. Everyone's seen them at this point, and now we've given them a name. They're called Whispers, or a better name would be Arbiters of Fate, which is kind of a stupid line from Red 13. And Aerith is starting to let the party know, if we haven't picked up on it yet as the players as well, that she knows things are amiss, even for the situation that they're in. So yeah, they get to the top of the tower, or the building, and Barrett has some great lines with the president.
He does.
It inevitably helps him up, probably only because Tifa was watching. Cloud wouldn't have cared. And then chases him inside. He's like basically telling him everything that he's gonna do, make him do, blah blah blah. And then the president's able to get his golden gun. And I love that he has a golden gun. That's so cool. And points it at Barrett. He's giving his evil man speech, and then history corrects itself, and he gets stabbed through the back by Sephiroth. But in the flesh, there he is in person, and they're all like, and then he stabs Barrett, and I lost it. I had no idea what was happening at that point. Give me your reaction the first time that happened.
That was where it was like you knew things were a little off the rail, and it was like they stabbed Barrett, and you had this brief moment like, am I gonna have to lower Barrett into a body of water? Is that what's happening here instead? Like, oh god.
Yeah.
Obviously within moments after that, it kind of it's reversed and Barrett's okay. But there was a brief moment of like, oh snap, is this the moment where they're like, nah, dudes, we're going off the rails. Because up until then, like, there's been changes, but like it's still very much the original storyline. And then Barrett got stabbed, and you're like, if Barrett dies there, you're like, this is very clearly become a very different, like an entirely different game. Thankfully, Barrett did not die, because that would have been very sad.
Me too. And it's definitely this point, even if not right before, there's a lot of ghosts floating around. And I still hadn't quite figured out what these things were in my first playthrough. I don't know if it was too dumb and I had to have it spelled out to me at the end and basically what they were doing. And so it wasn't clear to me that they had been preventing things that weren't supposed to happen. But they were annoying and meddlesome. I knew that much. And so when they revived him immediately, I was really mad because I was like, what are these things? And why did we just get Dragon Ball Z'd in a heartbeat? Like I didn't want him to die, but what was and they were trying to show me something, I realize now, and I was too stupid to see it. And so that was my bad. The ghosts are so much more tolerable, if not almost enjoyable. It's still really heavy-handed, but on a second playthrough, especially knowing what's going on and being on board for it, I'm like, okay. And especially knowing that they're gone
especially realizing that they're all just Owen Wilson.
Wow. But yeah, the best part is that like I can also take all this in knowing that we defeated the Destiny Ghosts and they're not going to be around anymore. At least, certainly not the strength and capacity that they were during this game.
Yep.
And so that's kind of nice too. So Barrett comes back to life. Just like in the original, like somehow Shinra, the president of Shinra's son, Rufus Shinra, the vice president of the company,
shows up right now.
Shows up from abroad, and man, maybe one of my favorite boss fights in the whole game was the one-on-one between him. Oh my gosh, it's so cool! What a baller! That gun, the beam, he's so
shooting
cool.
Like the coins, shooting through the coins.
Yeah, and he says something like, "Let me see what my money's paid for," referencing Cloud being like a Shinra property because he's a soldier. And Shinra makes soldiers. Because he's like, soldier, eh? because he mentions the eyes. And he's like, ex-soldiers, like, yeah, we'll see about that or something. Like, it's so cool. And then, that's over and he just bounces, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't remember how he
he. I think the Turks show up and Cloud runs off.
Sounds about right.
Something
and so
that.
Cloud, and then meantime, Aerith, Red 13, and Barrett have made their way downstairs, and you fight a big robot.
Yep,
that's a pretty good fight.
Yeah,
interesting combo of characters.
If you had your materia, it was.
Oh, I bet I made sure to have it.
I had gotten angry and stopped swapping materia at this point, so I Aerith, I think, had her materia, and I think Barrett had nothing on him, and I was like, well, here we go.
I tell you what, I played that one on easy on this playthrough. This one still took me a while. And I actually got into the red. Yeah.
Yeah. That was probably one of the harder fights I had. But again, I also was not optimized for it.
Tifa gets one of her coolest action scenes. There's another one where she does a dope sidekick to a robot and just it might be the Airbuster. I can't remember, but she just decks out some mook, and it's really cool. Oh no, she kicks a Shinra soldier at some point, and it's really awesome. But then she comes in and she saves Cloud from falling. Cloud, that's right. They shoot a missile. He's falling. He's no, Sephiroth. That's what it is. Rufus gets away, and then
Cloud climbs to the top of the building or something, trying to get Sephiroth, doesn't he?
Right, because he's stolen somebody's body. He's grabbed maybe the president? I don't remember, but he's got somebody's body in his arms for some reason. And then you get this, he falls, they're all falling together or whatever, and then you see that Sephiroth isn't actually there per se. He's doing what he can do via the Genova cells, which is inhabit the body of anybody who has Genova cells, or rather who was put through the soldier program proper. And it's one of those weirdos with the tattoos and the black cloaks. So he's kind of possessing these people, and he can appear as himself in these moments. So he's not, quote unquote, technically there. But in the original, he was. So it's not, it's the scenes are altered a little bit, but the reason the ghosts aren't going insane while he's there is because Sephiroth is there. He kills President Shinra, you just never see him.
Right.
But yeah, Tifa, in one of her cooler moments, is running outside and does a quick slide thing to catch Cloud, and they run downstairs. And the soldiers are coming, and Heidegger's there, and they're attacking Barrett and Aerith. And Barrett's
oh god,
I was just gonna say Barrett's standing off. He's like, hey, you saved Marlene, it's time for me to return the favor. I'm pretty much gonna die if nobody comes and saves him. But Cloud comes in on the motorcycle.
Yeah, and basically drop kicks everyone with a motorcycle.
Uses his sword to as leverage to fling the mass of his bike around, and then everybody jumps in that dopey, stupid truck, and it's so much fun. And then the not so fun part, especially not easy.
That took me three. I think it took me 3 tries. It's the only fight that took me more than 1 try to beat. I think it took me 2 or 3 tries to beat that freaking car.
The tank
robot.
Yeah, and it's so dumb. It's not that fun. And
no, it's a mechanically frustrating fight.
Yeah, and even though you've done it before, that was hours and hours ago. And the mechanics on this one are different anyway.
Yep.
The only cool part is that the stagger meter never goes down. So every time you stagger him, it's still at 500+% and goes up every time you slash him. And that was kind of cool, but it didn't. Again, the thing I hated about staggers, it felt like this thing I was trying so hard to get, and then when I got it, it didn't feel like it did anything unless I perfectly timed it. I had a limit break ready to go, or I used that finishing touch move that Cloud has, where he did the little dance and jumps up and slashes them. So you fight that, and then you're at the end of the highway. Ooh, and there's Sephiroth, and he's being all spooky, and the ghosts surround him, but then he just uses his blade and slashes them away. It opens a portal to another dimension. Aerith gives her speech, and she's like, destiny, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's on board. And then you go to, the end of time or something.
Basically, you go fight the destiny ghost.
Yep, the Arbiters of Fate. And this is obviously, easily, without a doubt, the biggest departure from the main game, because originally...
Also kind of, it's very hand-wavy.
What do you mean?
It's just, like we've had the ghost the whole time, and then but like the ghosts are supposed to are kind of played off originally as like this is they're an extension of the planet trying to write the timeline. But now we have this like this one giant one that are kind of tied to these 3 mini boss ones, and if we kill them, apparently it's over. So it's like it was just weird to me that these things that are tied to the planet. But if I kill this one, we're done. We're good. Got it.
Right. The planet just no longer has this defense.
Yeah.
Which, it kind of works when you consider.
I mean, it's not that far off for Final
weapon.
Fantasy, but
right. When you consider the planet had weapons, they literally called them weapons. Emerald weapon, ruby weapon, all those things. Those were just these giant kaijus. Huge beasts that you fought and killed. They're not going to. That was the planet's line of defense, and they weren't good enough. They were destroyed by you, the party. So in some respects, it makes sense. But you are 100% right. This is a Tetsuya Nomura moment, if I've ever seen one. This is straight up out of the end of Kingdom Hearts playbook, complete with just a bunch of weird cutscenes and jumping around. At one point, Cloud is fighting one of these things, and he says the words, "Bring it, bitch." And I'm like, what year is it?
Forgot about that.
What was that? That was stupid. And you get a pretty cool fight with Sephiroth. I liked it a lot.
I hated that fight.
Oh, you did? I thought it was really fun.
No, that fight to me was like such an ultimate like I got it. Sephiroth's strong, but it's like I'm gonna throw down a sword that's gonna take up 2/3 of this map, and if you don't get out of the radius, you're all gonna lose 1/3 of your health. And it's like I can't move all 3 characters around quick enough to get them all out. So pretty much every time 2 people were getting hit, and it just became a like, all right, let me just struggle to sit there and keep everyone healed and try to keep a little bit of damage going. Like I didn't feel like, and maybe that was the point. Maybe I was supposed to like. That was my takeaway from it was I was supposed to feel overwhelmed by Sephiroth. Like, yeah, we were winning, but we were barely doing it. But it struck me as like a very mechanically unfair fight.
I can't remember my first playthrough because that was normal difficulty. Yeah. I played on easy the second time and it was a blast because it was just cool. Like the difference between easy and normal in this game is too big in my opinion. Like easy is, and they say it, to their credit, like, hey, you just want to enjoy the story? I'm like, well, that's all you're getting because there's no difficulty here. I did like 20,000 damage to something at one point.
Good Lord.
And I don't know how easy that is to do or not. It was definitely during a stagger and it was definitely with a limit break, but I still did it, and like it was like all of its health. But I love that fight. I thought it was cool. So I had a lot of good time. And it's just, and outside the fight, when you're fighting the more unique looking ghosts, the trio and then the giant one, every time you kill one, Barrett and Red 13 fire off a giant blast.
Yeah, salvo into the big one.
Mm-hmm. And then
that was cool. I liked those fights. I did not like the Sephiroth fight.
You do,
especially those fight. Like I eventually got everyone paired off against like one of the aspects, and so I had I eventually got where Cloud was just fighting the melee aspect, and I was like Punisher mode and parry, and you're parry and parry, and you're dead. All right, here we go.
Yeah, it's great. It's it's not as, it sounds worse on paper, and I enjoyed the fights.
In the moment, it's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. But even still, when I was originally playing this, it was very late. It was post podcast. It was my birthday. Or rather, we were going into my birthday, after midnight last year. And I remember just thinking, like, this isn't terrible, but I feel really weird. Like, what am I experiencing right now? It's cool. It's flashy.
It was, it certainly qualified as epic, but it was like, what?
Like, part of me was worried that this was it. I was going to get some weird, like, and then the rest of the games played out the way they were going to play out, and there would be no more.
Or like I honestly had a moment where I was like, am I going to kill Sephiroth here and the game's just going to end? Like this is, you stopped Sephiroth from changing the timeline, except you changed the timeline by killing Sephiroth.
Yeah.
The end. And I was
sort
like,
of.
maybe.
Or like maybe you wouldn't remember it and like you killed the variant and then the real one would continue as is. But you kill everything in there, including you beat Sephiroth, whatever that means in this context. And then Cloud and him are kind of transported to a place that only they are at, which isn't dissimilar to the very end of the original Final Fantasy VII. Yep. So you beat Seraph Sephiroth, or whatever he's called, where he's in his angelic form. And it's just Cloud and him, and they're all bloodied up. Sephiroth doesn't have a shirt on because it's cool. And they have their final moment. And if you haven't obtained it... Exactly. Even if you haven't obtained it, you get to use one of the coolest moves in all of video games, Omni Slash. And if I'm understanding the podcast I listened to correctly and my vague memories, Cloud attempts to use Omni Slash. And then Sephiroth's like, not quite. Like, he says something along those lines and he blocks every one of the attacks instead.
He does,
And
yeah.
it's like, and then there's this like, how did that happen moment? Like, he's like, Cloud is just completely flabbergasted at this guy's capabilities, even knowing what he's capable of. And then there's this weird moment where they're just kind of staring at the edge. They call it the edge of creation. Sephiroth speaks some really cryptic stuff, and he whispers in his ear, he's like, 7 seconds till the end, Cloud. What are you going to do with it? And nobody knows what that means for sure. Some people have timed out that the scene in which Sephiroth kills Aerith is 7 seconds long. But who knows? Who knows why Sephiroth's doing any of this? Presumably, he tricked you into killing those things.
Yeah,
Like,
that
I
was
have
always
to
my
imagine
assumption, was that he
that-
wanted you to kill them because apparently he couldn't do it, and then his plan was then to get rid of you.
Yeah. Sephiroth's greatest strength was always how he was just this massive manipulator. Because in the original, he's not just doing it to screw with Cloud. I know I said that earlier, but he chose Cloud to screw with him. But he needs Cloud to do the things he's doing because he can't do some of them himself.
Right.
He needs everything to go the way that it's going. And presumably this Sephiroth is from the future. Probably. Like, it's a post-Advent children Sephiroth. And
I
so
couldn't
he
tell
knows
if it was supposed to be that or if it's somehow the future has communicated back to Sephiroth.
one of the two.
Yeah,
And
which
for the
all
most part,
intents and
it's-
purposes is the same.
Are the same, exactly. And so, and then he just disappears. And then you end up back on the road. And everything is just whatever. And then you leave Midgar. But during all of this, you're getting flashes to the future. A future that
Oh yeah, I
you've
forgot about
seen
that.
before.
Everyone kind of sees key moments from the. We get to see some key cutscenes from the original game redone.
Yeah, mostly
including
the end.
One very painful one with Aerith.
Yep. And you see Meteor in all its amazing modern day glory. And then you also see the very end of the original game, which is Red 13 running with somehow he has children.
Yep.
Little pups with him. And they look over a now like overgrown Midgar. Midgar doesn't exist anymore. Or rather, it's been retaken. And at some point, Red 13 utters like, this is the future we'll get if we fail today. So the original ending of Final Fantasy VII could be the bad ending, is the implication here, which is kind of crazy. So who knows what's going to happen there. But more visions and stuff. And at some point, you get a cutscene to Zack Fair, who is the main character of Crisis Core, who is
Who Cloud
the
thinks he
original
is.
soldier, who Cloud kind of has taken over the persona, not persona, but the role of. He's like I'm a first class
backstory
soldier.
of
He's taken on his will, which is a theme of Crisis Core.
stolen glory.
Exactly, stolen glory. The theme of Crisis Core is Zack is trying to become a soldier, and you have to have your honor and you have to have your path in life. And he has a mentor, and he ends up having to kill him through a series of events, and it's sad. And he inherits that guy's will. The Buster Sword was his. He gets the Buster Sword from him. Cloud eventually gets the Buster Sword from Zack, who dies defending Cloud in the original.
Yep.
And it's a very... Dude, if you ever can, I don't know how you will. It shouldn't be too hard to emulate a PSP even on like your laptop. Try to play Crisis Core someday. It's got a lot of flaws, but it is an overall solid game, and Zack is an amazing character. And the end is heartbreaking because he dies. And there's this scene where like he's been sending Aerith letters and she hasn't received him in a while because he's been like held prisoner with Cloud. And you're like, he gets one more off to her at some point, and she's like reading it in like the final moments, and he's already dead at this point, and she's never going to see him again. It's so much. Yeah. Anyway, you see the moments before he would die. He's making his last stand against the Shinra soldiers. A bunch of stuff happens in the stuff that we just talked about. And then you see him post that battle. And he's like, is that it? Did we win? Like, he's not dead. And you see this little bag float by. And it's got this Shinra dog mascot on it that you've seen earlier. They made a really strong point of pointing it out.
Yep.
And this dog is different. and you look over to the Midgar and all the ghosts that were surrounding it. They were clearly there throughout all time. Like this key singularity moment was happening throughout all time and space, and they explode and they're no more. And it's this moment where you realize, like, oh, we're not in a remake anymore. We're in a straight up sequel. Like, things aren't going to be the same. Zack is alive, and Aerith might know that. It's not exactly clear.
Yeah.
And then the game kind of ends. And that's the bomb they drop on us.
Do you want to touch upon, because while it comes in intermission, the additional ending cutscenes we get that relate more to the base remake?
Sure do. So yeah, intermission has post credits cutscenes that have nothing to do with Yuffie's story. They are 100% focused on the characters that we saw at the very end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and so you see them walking down the road from Midgar, presumably to Calm. In fact, I think they say Calm at one point.
Well, because they Tifa asked Barrett how far it is to Calm, and then we get the hilarious Aerith, like, when you say all day.
Right. Like, do you mean at the end of the day when you go to sleep, or when you wake up in the next morning, or whatever it was?
It's like my mom would say on day. She meant from when you woke up till you went to bed. But when I say all day, I mean from when you go to sleep, wake up one day to when you wake up the next day. And Barrett's like, I think I mean the first one.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
Tifa's like, wait, is that good? That still sounds bad.
Yeah. And are we going to be walking the whole way? Which is kind of a cheeky potential nod to, no, you're not going to be walking around in an open world.
Yeah, we're gonna set you up in the next major set piece, and you're just gonna go from there.
Yeah, they run into Chocobo Bill, who's that guy. He's in the original too. He's on the path to or from Midgar, and he'll give you a ride to the farm, I think. But they hitch a ride. You know, there's a cute scene where they try to teach you, or Tifa teaches Aerith how to hitchhike with a thumb. You know, kind of sticking the hip out a little.
The Chocobo flirts with Barrett, and he like grumpily hums the Chocobo theme.
Yeah, that's right. That was so cute. So, but then it's pretty clear that like they're arriving in Calm. Like, they're already there, so they cut out any potential travel that you were going to experience in the next game.
Yep.
And there's a moment where I think, what is it, start to rain? And then Aerith and Cloud have a conversation about, like, something kind of vague.
He's like, are you scared?
Mm-hmm.
I think he asked her if she's scared, and I forget what she says back to him, but yeah, it's vague.
Right. And so that's where that ends, but it's interesting. Because again, it cuts out. Everyone's like, well, what next? Are we doing the open world or whatever? Like, maybe, but maybe not, because we're already in Calm.
Yep. And
I'll just regurgitate this. I was watching the Easy Allies Spoilercast, and they had Maximilian Dude, and his idea was it would be really cool if the start screen of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, whatever that's called, is like Cloud and Sephiroth in the back of the truck, which is the beginning of the flashback scene that happens in Calm when Cloud's telling it. It's like, because everyone, like, nobody except Cloud really knows what Sephiroth's about.
Yep.
And so he has to tell everybody, and that's when you start to get what eventually you find out is an unreliable narrator. Of course, now Aerith kind of knows some stuff too, maybe, that she may or may not divulge, so who knows how that flashback scene is going to take place. And then finally, in this little post-credits cutscene, you're back in Midgar, in front of the church, and there's Zack, and he's doing this really adorable like practice thing because he's been gone a long time. We're not sure how long, because it was like less than a year, but it was several months that he was like, they're just like hanging out in like a Mako tank, him and Cloud in some like Shinra lab before they like wake up and break free or whatever. And so it's been a while, but not like 5 years like it could have been. Like, I don't know how long it's supposed to be at this point. Anyways, he's rehearsing his apology essentially to her, but also their reunion, because he's, you know, nervous and excited to see her. And he opens the gate. There's a bunch of people in there. They look like refugees, maybe.
Because you saved a lot of people from Sector 7.
Right.
By getting them to run away. So I took it as this is where a bunch of the Sector 7 refugees were hiding or were relocated.
But then the way the shot is, it pans over to the flowers, and the flowers are wilting, but you don't and it's like the camera's from like the floor, basically, kind of angled up, and you can see Zach from that angle, but you can't see anything that he might be seeing in the back of the church. Zooms in on his face, it goes black, and then you hear him say, Aerith? Like, question mark. And it's like, what does that mean? Is she just missing? Or something, is he, like, are we all in the same timeline? Because that wouldn't make much sense, because Cloud's alive in 2 different places at the same time.
Yeah.
So is Zach still in some alternate timeline? And if so, what else has happened in that alternate timeline?
I don't know. That's good. Like, I remember briefly getting that impression when I saw Zach. I was like, because I was also trying to figure out, because going back to the base remake, like you're seeing his cutscenes, and I was like, this, like, and you kind of helped me understand with Crisis Core, because I couldn't tell. I was like, was this supposed to be happening the same time as I'm leaving Midgar?
No, it was 5 years prior.
That's what I thought, though. The way it was timed, and then that would, if that's the case, it would make sense that he got there and Aerith's gone, because she's leaving Midgar right now. But I wasn't sure. It is like, I don't know. Like, cause maybe you know, Cloud got away on his own, and now Zack got recaptured, and now Zack has finally escaped. But then there's also 2 Buster Swords, and
exactly, two Clouds, 2 Buster Swords. Can't have 2 Buster Swords.
No, you have 2 Clouds, that's fine, but no 2 Buster Swords.
Right, and then so yeah, it's crazy. Where to go from here? I don't know how you, like, it's a lot to unravel.
So well, let's start with this.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen with Zack?
I don't know, because I don't know anything about, like, his situation. Like, he made a beeline for Aerith, which is exactly what he would have done.
Yep.
But, like, where is she? I'm guessing she's just missing. I don't think she's dead, but I'm going to assume that somehow Zack is in the same timeline.
Me too.
Because I can't, because I could say, all right, Zack's in another timeline, but I have even less to say about that, because I have no idea what to say.
I think he's in the same timeline. I think the timing of his escape has shifted to be concurrent with the game,
potentially.
And I'm curious to see where that goes, because there's a version of this where Zack could potentially be an antagonist. I don't want to say a villain, but an antagonist in future games.
How so? That sounds crazy.
Because we took Aerith away.
Yeah, but no, because she's like, they would have to go through hoops to make it so that he doesn't realize she went of their own accord.
Well, and then there's also the aspect that we've talked about. Sephiroth can take over anyone who's been exposed to Genova, which Zack is a mundane version of that.
Yeah, that's true. However, he is now he's not a mundane version. He's like an exemplary example of the soldier program. Now,
yeah, but like, there's a reason why Cloud can't be taken over, right? No, Cloud doesn't get taken over.
He's not a proper soldier, so he doesn't get possessed in the same way.
Yeah.
But the big secret is that everybody who gets Genova cells will eventually deteriorate. Like,
well, and the President Shinra mentions that at one point when Cloud claims, says, I'm a ex-soldier, he basically says, oh, you probably don't have much time left.
Yeah, and Hojo makes similar comments where we
get a look on Tifa's face about that, because she's very clearly unaware what being a soldier will potentially cause Cloud, but we never got resolution on that.
Oh, that is another thing we didn't mention. Like, Tifa is already sniffing out something's wrong with Cloud. He's not telling the truth. She's like, where? Like, at first it sounds like friendly banter, but she won't let it go, and she's like, so what's she been doing these last 5 years? What's going on? He's like, oh, whatever. He's like, nah, something's wrong with you. Yeah. I can tell. And then he literally has like weird mental brain attacks in the Shinra headquarters. I mean, Zack being an antagonist would be interesting, but definitely not what I want. Like, no, I don't want that at all.
I'm just trying to think, what else do you do with him? I mean, and unless you want to run his own little intermission type thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. What do you do? Because if he joins the party, you just got 2 Clouds in the party.
No, because they're totally different people. They are
but fair. But as far as combat, like, there's no way that they're going to let you select a party and be like, yes, I want 2 Clouds in my party, because presumably they're going to fight the same way.
Yeah, you would think they could go that lazier route. No, I don't think he'll join up with the party officially, if ever, until much later in the game. let's put a pin in Zach. We'll come back to him, but like, you ask, what do they do with him? Does Aerith still die?
I mean, I hope not. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry like a baby if I have to watch modern graphics. I'm already dreading filming on camera Aerith dying in Final Fantasy VII. I'm gonna cry like a baby if she dies with modern graphics. I don't think so. And so this. I mean, what do you think?
Originally I thought they might kill Tifa instead. I don't think they will. I think Tifa's too much of a
and especially with the Cloud. Don't fall in love with me. Like if Tifa was gonna die, it was gonna be because they were gonna set up that Cloud and Aerith then became romantic, and they have already very easily given their if Aerith doesn't die, there's gonna be some. Well, everyone needs to have their happy ending, and they've already. If Zack's alive, Aerith's happy ending exists.
That's true. That's true. I think now, in different ways, but in the way that makes it hurt all the more, but also maybe in like a beautiful, tragic way, I think both she and Zack are still doomed to die.
Ooh,
we're supposed to think that maybe that doesn't happen.
To make it hit all the harder.
I think she'll be spared. They'll reunite somehow, and then, but eventually
there'll be some grand self-sacrifice that they have to do because they're not allowed to be alive.
Yeah, I mean, originally just after playing, when I realized the floodgates were open and anything's possible, technically, at least, I was like, Cloud does it this time. Like, Cloud kills her, or Cloud kills Tifa. Like, whoever dies, Cloud kills them. Like, because he almost does it in the original.
He does. There's that whole, no matter what button you push, he keeps going closer and closer.
Right, and it's kind of hokey, because it's old PlayStation 1, but it would be way more like ominous and sinister in modern graphics.
Yeah.
And I think maybe he does do it. Because like he gives Sephiroth the black materia and he almost kills Aerith, but and he's really upset about her death and stuff, but like, and those are all good reasons to be upset in real life, but this isn't real life. This is a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I want bigger reasons for bigger things. Like I want him to struggle with the fact that not of his own accord, and he was helpless to stop it, but he like snaps back to his senses, and the sword is in sight,
with the sword,
and he's holding it, and he's just mortified, and she's like smiling at him, like I knew that this had to happen, kind of thing,
or like it's okay.
Yeah, like maybe everybody gets a happy ending. I don't hate that idea, but.
I mean, like, I hate saying this because I don't get me wrong, I love a good happy ending, but part of the emotional weight and part of the reason that Final Fantasy VII is in the zeitgeist is because Aerith dies.
Right. Where's the revenge?
Right.
Like, why do we hate Sephiroth so much anymore? Because like Cloud hates Sephiroth a lot before Aerith gets killed, but like, it's like you don't know why, and then once you find out. Oh, that's not true. He does burn down his entire hometown and kills his mom, and so he is pretty upset about that. But like,
but for the player, Sephiroth killing Aerith is why you're like, okay,
right?
Now,
like
it's personal.
We
not
can't
just trying to
backstory.
Stop you to save the world. It's I have to kill you because I need my revenge.
Right. Like we need to hate him. We need to hate him all over again. And there's a lot of ways that could happen. And there's a lot of dumb ways they could undo it even after it happens. Like, people could die. It could be sad. We could kill Sephiroth, and then for some reason, people come back to life anyway because we've already kind of proven that there's no guardrails anymore on what can and can't happen with time. Now we might have to reset things. We could end ourselves back up in a loop. And I know that theory's out there too. It's too crazy for me to get into because I don't even remember half of it, but it has to do with like. There's a track that plays at some point.
It's the Dark Tower theory.
Basically, yeah. There's a track that plays at some point, and it's the same thing that happens when Aerith looks up at the beginning cinematic, and it's like this, like, oh, she's always known, she always knows, and it's always going to go this way, and this is the happiest ending. But who knows, man? Who knows? I just hope we only get 3 games.
Do you think we will hit all the major points in some fashion from the original game?
No.
Or do you think or do you think we're getting ready to deviate pretty heavily?
I don't know how heavily, but we are going to deviate for sure. For instance, in Intermission, one of the fun side content things they introduced is a game called Fort Condor. Do you remember Fort Condor?
The name sounds familiar, but no.
So at some point in the second disc, you go on this kind of like story-approved side quest, we'll call it, and you have to get all these giant materia pieces that Shinra has at these various reactors, because they've got their fingers in all these pies. And one of them is at this place called Fort Condor, where a literal gigantic bird lives, sitting on top of like a mountain base.
That I don't remember the giant materia, but giant bird on top of a mountain in Final Fantasy VII, I do remember.
And exactly,
God, I played this game a long time ago.
And the army is coming, and you have to like you play this really weird kind of like almost like auto chess. If you've ever seen what auto chess is, you've got these units and you put them down, and it's almost like this like automatic RTS. They took that and they made it a mini game inside of Intermission. It's actually quite fun. I just didn't have time to play much of it beyond the mandatory one. Roche wants to play it with you. He's like, "Oh well, if you can't tell me where Cloud is, why don't you play this game? I'm quite good." And it's really funny. Again, I didn't play him because I didn't have time for that. So if that's been encapsulated inside a minigame, I gotta think that we're probably not going to go to Fort Condor, at least not for a significant amount of time. So we're going to cut a lot of those things. We'll probably go to the beach place like Costa del Sol. There's no way we don't go to the Golden Saucer because it's so important to bear it in addition to being iconic. We go to Nibelheim, and that'll be really fun too. But like every little place, I gotta imagine we're gonna skip things. But then like they're gonna want to put in their own stuff too. I don't know. Like I could see us skipping Wutai altogether after having played what I played of Intermission. But I also can see us going back to Wutai because of what I played Intermission. Well,
and I just like I talked about it earlier and how they set up Wutai as like, hey, Shinra's blaming all them. And there's this anti-Wutai sentiment, and it's almost implying that like Shinra wants to go start another war with Wutai because it stops people. And it's like, so is that war gonna be playing on in the background while we're playing? Is that gonna start sometime in the later games, and we'll see that going on in the background, and we'll have to play with the consequences of that while also trying to deal with Sephiroth?
It would be a better set piece. Oh my goodness, I really hope we don't go. That sounds like it could be a disaster of a distraction from the main game. Here's a whole war. Like if they can't weave that in, like you said, it sounds good as like a background piece because like otherwise it just feels like it's your little party of 7 versus the entirety of Shinra, which is essentially the world, versus Sephiroth, which is essentially the world. Like you are the only resistance to total catastrophe. So
this would at least give the impression that you have allies in the world.
Yeah, and if Yuffie becomes a major player on that front, that would be pretty cool and make a lot of sense. So yeah, maybe that'd be cool. I just don't know if we go to Wutai because Wutai was always a side quest anyway. I don't know if we go there and she steals your materia because the game ends with her on a chocobo and she's making a little speech. She's trying to pump herself up about finding some people to like recruit for her cause, which is so Yuffie. And it's so very much the way that you originally run into her, which is kind of like you beat her in combat. But she kind of has that bravado. It's like, yeah, I let you win. And you have to basically let her think that you're joining her. Otherwise, she won't join you and she runs away.
Right.
And she won't join the party. And so they're like, and she, in the scene, the landscape that she's on is very similar to the one that you're like walking on when you're heading towards Calm. So, and you can meet her very, very soon. Not immediately, but very soon after the events at Midgar. So I don't think we're going to belabor the whole Yuffie joins the party thing. But then we got to get to Nibelheim. We got to meet Vincent. And then we got to eventually find Rocket Town. And then we get Sid.
Yep.
And at some point in the Gold Saucer, we meet up with Kate Sith. And then that is the whole party. That Sid's still the last one. Oh, I totally forgot to mention Biggs is alive.
Oh, yeah.
Presumably Wedge and Jesse, but it's really not
maybe
clear
because
that
Wedge is like
alive.
Thrown out a window in the Shinra Tower.
I don't remember a window.
So
I meant to look it up. I remember he gets dragged by the ghost.
He gets dragged, and there's the sound of broken glass is my recollection.
That would be so depressing, but also like I just didn't catch that. I gotta look that up after. I gotta remember to look that up.
And Jesse's maybe alive because we see some of her like clothing items next on like the bed, like the drawer next to the bed that Biggs is in. And Biggs is in the orphanage in Sector 5 because we found out he used to run that orphanage.
No, he was a part of it.
Or he was a part of the orphanage.
Yeah, he was an orphan, I think. Maybe both.
Yeah. I don't know. Like like that's the thing is they could go anywhere. Like they because they could very easily do the rest of this largely holding to the story beats of the original game.
Yeah, you could.
And still play this
just like this one.
And yeah, just like this one did, and you know the main line, especially of how Sephiroth stays ahead of them, will be because Sephiroth knows what's going to happen, but they've got to follow the beat because they still have to do all the same things in order to have a chance of beating Sephiroth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's also this thing of, man, we could go off the rails and play a completely different game. Yeah, because it's interesting. Things we never saw in the base game. We never got party select.
Nope.
We never had enough people in the party to have party select. So like they never gave us that option.
At one point, we should have had the ability to choose Red 13.
Yes, and they didn't. Instead, they made Red 13 an NPC in the party.
Right.
Like it's like the fact that like they didn't have the party select mechanic in the first game is so weird to me. It's like are they gonna control our party heavy-handedly throughout the rest of the series?
I think it wasn't worth designing that.
Probably because it's only like really one scene where it would have come into play.
Right. Funnily enough, I don't know if you noticed because I don't know if you've gotten this scene yet. The PHS device. I don't remember what this acronym is for, but it's the device you get in the original game, and it's like their little hand wave. Like, this is how we change party members. It's like a phone. You call up the party members, they know where you are, and that's how you switch people out. That's the same acronym that was on the device that you would use
during Hojo's lab. Yeah,
when you were switching out party members, which was always a fun little nod.
I did. I missed that because I totally forgot about that in the original game.
Yeah, so many nods. I've probably missed a million of them.
Oh, I'm sure I missed a million more.
This game is not that it's unreplayable, but I won't replay this game for a very long time. Not even before the next one comes out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, and I was like, "Do I want to play this again?" And I was like, "No,
I just played it. Don't do it."
I think if I go watch Advent Children, I'll be good. Like, I think I just
want
want more Final Fantasy VII. Is really all I want right now.
We'll do a watch along and make Jason watch with us.
It's a fun movie. I'm not gonna call that a good movie, but it's a fun movie.
It is not a good movie. It is a bad movie with some really awesome fight scenes.
Yeah.
The extended edition that kind of rounds out some of the less good parts, like as far as like some of the zanier Geostigma stuff, is like it's over 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's kind of long. All right. So we really have no idea what's happening story-wise. World's our oyster. But I'm here for the ride. Are you here for the ride?
I am here for the ride. I'll have to apparently get a PS5 before I'll be able to play before I can play the part 2, but
that's true. Because we have a fantastic, complete classic in OG Final Fantasy VII. And we're getting those phone kind of like short remakes, I guess, where it's going to be like, here's the story of the whole series.
Oh, yeah, the Final Fantasy VII saga thing they're doing.
The compilation, which is cool because Dirge of Cerberus is part of that package. And I don't have time. We're almost over the 3-hour mark.
Yeah.
So I don't have time to get into a synopsis of Intermission, but just know that near the very end, because of one of the final bosses that you fight, the Dirge of Cerberus characters are on the table.
Oh, damn.
So that's going to be at least kind of important. Who knows if they remain...
Go like watch a not OG Final Fantasy VII synopsis of all the side properties so I can pick up on all this stuff.
I'll see if I can find you one.
Yeah.
Because I've watched some on and off.
At least for Dirge of Cerberus and Crisis Core, it sounds like.
Definitely Crisis Core. Well, jury's still out on Dirge of Cerberus, how important that might be.
Okay.
Or if they'll just kind of like hand wave what Dirge of Cerberus was and just use those characters and like the idea of them. Because basically, there's another underground contingency of like super soldiers, but they're even weirder and more anime, and they only fought Vincent in that one game that nobody played. And they kind of have no impact on the greater Final Fantasy VII universe outside of that game.
Okay. So they may just get retconned into just...
I'm thinking it's possible, yeah. They're like, hey, these are kind of fun, interesting character designs and ideas, but let's use them in a sensical way.
Yeah.
But Crisis Core is very important. it's got a lot of dirt. It's the same producer or director for both of those games, and so Crisis Core is certainly the better of the two because it's not wholly like it's not. There was some existing material to work off of. He didn't have to create everything himself. But yeah, whenever those phone things come out, I'm gonna get those for sure.
Yeah, that's tempting.
And I'm all on for the sequel. So let's talk more like gameplay, game design. Do you think it's going to be mostly the same of what we got, and they'll just kind of move us around from place to place, or?
I hope not. Like we talked about some flaws in the actual gameplay, combat systems. I want to see those improve. I do think. Well, rather, I don't think we're, as we said, I don't think we're going to get overworld. We may get some, we're never going to get the full world overworld.
Mm-hmm.
We may get some areas where, it's a controlled areas and you can travel between kind of these locales, whether it's like Calm and the farm and some stuff like that. But it's going to be less open world and more, like somewhere in between on the rails and open world.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 12 springs to mind.
Okay.
Which did not have a proper overworld, but each one of its areas were enormous, and like I'm sure at some point the story might prevent you from like literally walking back to the beginning of the game, but they're all connected. Like for the most part, there might have been like a spot or two. It's like, okay, we're gonna ride this airship to this city, and then walk through these mines that connected this place, that connected this village, that connected this forest. But you technically would just leave one place and walk through a huge area to the next place. But it wasn't an overworld. It was just the game. And I'm wondering if we might have something like that again with certain areas like, okay, this train will take you essentially to this next place, but it's huge. And that place might connect directly to somewhere else, and that might have an airship that goes to that other place. But at some point, we do have to get on boats and ships because you have to go across the ocean to Juneau, and it's hard to say. I think it'll be a little bit more open, but I don't know. It just depends. They have so much content to get through, and again, I'm going to assume this is a trilogy with some DLC sprinkled throughout. They don't need to do those padding segments anymore. Please do not make me go through stupid underground trails that don't do anything to add to the game except make it longer. You have so many places to take me. Take me there. I want to see the world.
Yeah.
Give it to me. Now, how far do they go? Disc 1 doesn't end with her death. It's one of the last things that happens, but there's another boss fight. There's a really kind of depressing, you go to the crater, basically, where the real Sephiroth is, and that's where you deliver the black materia to him. And then that's the end of the first disc.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Barrett and Tifa are captured. And then the second disc is a chunk, but it's not as long as the first one. And then the third disc, as we all know, is pretty much just the final dungeon, which is the crater itself and then the final boss fight. And so, it's not unreasonable that they could do this in 3 parts, as long as they don't dilly-dally and fluff about. But we'll see. Depends on how much they wrote ahead of time, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's hard to say. Because I remember when Jason asked me, and it, just going, if I were to break it out, the same 30-hour segments based on how much...
Well, you would have... Because they turned 5 hours into 30. So you'd essentially have another, 5 to 6 games?
7 games for Final Fantasy 7.
There it is. We broke the code.
Would be a nightmare. I would be dead before they came out.
That's the thing too. Unless if they're going to do more than a trilogy, they got to figure out a way to up the clip of them putting these games out. Because I'm not waiting 5 years for every game.
Nope. All right, that was fun.
It's
a good game.
One final little fun question. What do you look forward the most to seeing? Yeah, rendered in modern glory.
Ooh, that's a good question. A lot of people say Gold Saucer. Never been a big fan of that section.
Yep.
It's fun, but on subsequent playthroughs, I just want to get out of there.
I don't remember liking Gold Saucer.
I'm just off the top of my head, because we will see it and it's sooner rather than later, I really like going to Nibelheim. After Cloud, this is after Cloud has had his little like, hey, my house got burned to the ground. And he goes there and there's nothing wrong with it. And he looks like a total nutbag. And at first you kind of think he is, and they find out later that like Shinra has rebuilt it and staffed the entire village with like people to pretend like nothing ever happened. So that it's always funny how much they want to protect their image for someone who has like an iron grip over the world, but whatever. Yep. But you go to the Nibelheim reactor, it's just rife with a lot of story related stuff. It's where you get Vincent. And it'll be really interesting how they introduce Vincent, who they made retroactively really important, but before he was a side quest character, you could literally walk by the door and never enter and just ignore him. But he's super important in the mythos that they've created around this game. So I think Nibelheim will be really interesting because it's going to be creepy if they do it right.
Yeah.
What about you?
I just want to see Sid.
Yeah, Sid's a pretty good one too.
I just want to see Sid. I want Sid. I want to hear the modern rendition of Sid's theme, and I just want to see grumpy, angry at the world Sid.
Mm-hmm.
And stab him with a spear.
He's a bit. They're gonna have to revamp him quite a bit because if we thought Barrett wasn't kosher, Sid is straight up abusive to that woman.
Yeah,
that like it's too much. And so it'll be interesting. And Sid always kind of like, I love Sid from a design standpoint. I think he's a really interesting character, like in theory. But like when you kind of break it out, it's like, who is Sid in relation to the rest of this party? Like it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, he just gets swept up with them.
He's just the pilot that eventually like, yeah, exactly, gets swept up, and he's the pilot that runs the airship eventually. And he wants to go to space. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my monitor went black because I hadn't touched anything in a while, so I thought everything had ruined. Anyway, and eventually, yeah, he goes to space, which is his dream.
Yep.
Which is Sid is so 1990s PS1 JRPG. Like that whole segment and his purpose in the game is so like.
I also got a distinct feeling that he was like. He was the 1990s. This is our USA character.
Yes, he is an American
space-loving, hard-drinking, angry man.
Smoking
man. Like,
and he's the oldest. He is like. There's always a token old guy, even though sometimes they're only middle aged. They treat that like ancient.
Yep.
I looked it up earlier. Barrett is 35, so he's still older than us.
But
good. Sid is probably somewhere in his 40s or 50s.
Good. So we'll be as old as Sid when this series wraps.
Exactly. Nah, fingers crossed, man. It's only 3 parts, and part 2 is like 2 years away max. COVID, who knows? But COVID will be done by the time it's coming out, obviously. Yeah. Hopefully. Oh, please.
Got it.
Please
so
be over.
So I have 2 years to get my hands on a PS5 solely so I can play Final Fantasy VII Remake.
That's plenty of time.
And God of War 2, I guess.
That's even more time.
Yeah.
I guarantee we see Final Fantasy VII Part 2 before we see God of War Ragnarok sequel.
Well, no, but God of War Ragnarok is supposed to be out next year.
It's supposed to be out now. That's what it's supposed to be. Dude, Horizon might not come out till next year. We'll see.
That's true.
We shall see.
That's fine. I'll just go play Skyrim.
Real quick, again, one more topic, even though you already did the one more topic. Did you like this game? Was it what you wanted?
It was. I'm very happy I played this game. For all of its flaws, this was a fun game. And while it is somewhat annoying, like the kind of nebulous, unsure way that it changed everything, it does something that I always enjoy. I may not enjoy in the moment, but I enjoy in the long run, which is it gives me topics to speculate and talk about with my friends on what are we going to see.
For sure. Yeah, I played the original.
Yep.
Maybe like a year before this game came out, knowing that it wouldn't be too long and I wanted to be, fresh, like see that game. And it had been a really long time.
Yeah.
It had just come out on the Switch, and I wanted to see, like, I'd always liked the game, obviously, but like, was this one of the best games ever? Or are all the haters right when they're like, it's not that good? They're wrong. the OG Final Fantasy VII is one of the greatest games of all time. It's amazing, and it's it's not convoluted. The combat, while somewhat simple even by JRPG standards, is still just so much fun from start to finish.
It is
great characters.
The game itself is aging a little bit. Having played it right now, like it's
sure.
an older game, but it is a game that was definitely very good at its time, and the story of the game is still very fun. The mechanics of the game are a little tedious. It's got some tedium. More. It's not as streamlined as a modern game would be. I think is the best way I would put it. But yeah, otherwise I agree.
Yeah, I think I think some of those cheats that you can do, the ×3 speed, etc., really shore up some of those things. And you're right, it has aged. I don't think it will age any more than it has. I think it's reached the kind of like a lot of the better NES games and a lot of the better SNES games. Like, yeah, they've aged, but at this point, I mean, sure, you might still hate them, but now they can be still appreciated in their fullness for what they are.
Yeah,
and I think
it'll
always be kind of fun, no matter how much better video games get, until we're literally hooked up into the network.
Yeah.
But I gotta be careful, otherwise I'll just start talking about how much I love that game, and then you'll remind me that you beat it first, and then we'll go around and around and around.
I literally made a note to myself not to say that on this spoiler cast. I want you to know.
And I brought it up myself. How Nostradamus of me.
But you were saying that you played the original in preparation for this one. Was there a grander point there?
I guess kind of. Thank you for reminding me.
How do you think this shaped? Like, I mean, obviously, the remake is only the first 5 hours of the original. Do you think you're gonna, whatever it ends up being, a trilogy or whatnot? Do you think you're gonna have finished the remake saga and get to the end, and will you down the line when you're like, oh, I want to revisit Final Fantasy VII? Do you think you'll grab the remake, or do you think you'll grab the original?
Only time will tell, man. Obviously, the remakes will be longer, and so I'll always. If everything turns out the way that I hope it does, and I think the way that it should, they will complement each other, and you will play one after the other. Because for all intents and purposes, we're looking at a sequel. We're not looking at a remake. We're looking. I mean, yes, it is. It is a Final Fantasy VII that can now last and not be so aged. But again, as I said at the very top of this, like, this is a game that benefits 100% more from, like, it is doubly more enjoyable in my opinion having played the first one. Like, it just doesn't hit the same if you don't know what you're missing. Or what you're not missing, or whatever the phrasing should be on that. Like, you have to know what's different to know the craziness and like the whole thing. Like, Zack's alive.
Yeah.
What?
That was, for just, oh god, that really was a like, okay, we're altering the timeline, and then it was like, wait, what? You're not supposed to be alive. It breaks everything about Cloud.
It does break him. It's gonna break him even more when Zack shows up. I was getting mad. Like, I was getting worked up, and I think I was heading towards just being pissed at what was happening with all the timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah.
And when Zack showed up, and I was like, what are they doing? And when he was alive, I did like a 180. I was like, but not because I was just so happy he was alive, because like I don't need Zack. Like, Zack's death is poignant.
You saw the possibilities.
But like when I realized what it all meant and that what this could mean going forward, I was like, oh. And so like, yeah, it's just crazy. It is a crazy game. All right, that was long.
Yes,
and I liked it.
I'm glad we got the early start.
I'm glad we got the early start too, because it's midnight right now.
Yep.
And this is going to be over 3 hours for sure, just over, between the opening stuff and this, what I eventually cut and whatever. But thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
I
owe you for loaning me that PS1 all those years ago so that I could get into this game, and it has brought me nothing but joy since.
You're welcome.
And slight frustrations and tedium, but mostly nothing but joy.
Exactly, and it created content in this and your other playthrough, and then you can play Final Fantasy VIII when you're done with that one.
Oh boy.
That one does not hold up as well, unfortunately.
That one will also really blow my mind, I'm sure. That's some really mental stuff, as I recall you telling me over the years.
Yeah, it's got its own share of that. More so than the 7 and 8. They both go for the really weird twists. Like the really weird twists. Everything else has pretty classic twists, but Anyway. Well, thank you, you lovely NFers. I don't have a sheet in front of me to tell me what to say, but we hope you enjoyed this. 2 years or 1 year removed from the launch of the game.
You got a Spoilercast out with Jason pretty close, as I recall.
Josh might listen to this someday. He's working through the game very slowly.
Ooh,
so Josh, hopefully you didn't spoil yourself on my original Spoilercast or this one, and if you did, I hope you enjoyed yourself, as did anybody else who listened. Bye.
Bye.
Don't be shy, little kitten. Shimmy on over and give Daddy some sugar.
I'm sick of this. I'm sick of all of this.